This handsome young man is our main character, Leo Blog. 5,000 years ago, you went by another name, Kai. You defeated Arepos, the source of all evil in the world. But after 5,000 years passed, he discovered something shocking. For some miraculous reason, all of his achievements had been completely erased from history. Meanwhile, his comrades were being praised to the high heavens. And now, Leo is stuck sitting here, listening to some crazy teacher ramble on about fairy tales from the dinosaur age. Our story begins at the prestigious Dan Royal Academy. Inside a certain classroom, the teacher, full of enthusiasm, lecturing the students. Down below, this is truly the age of heroes. 5,000 years have passed since the Hero Chronicles appeared in the world. During that time, the mortal realm has undergone many changes, just like how the prestigious Dan Royal Academy was chosen to host the Lumen entrance exam. This year, among you students, there will surely be someone who passes this exam and gets their name inscribed in the Hero Chronicles. We believe that future heroes are right here among us. To achieve that, you must. The teacher was enthusiastically lecturing, but suddenly a commotion erupted, interrupting his speech. This greatly annoyed the teacher. Pay attention in class, the teacher said, then turned toward the student with white hair dozing off in class. The noise just now was caused by him falling asleep and slamming his face on the desk. That's Leo. If you think you know everything, let me ask you this. What ideals were upheld 5,000 years ago for someone to be called a hero? In response, the young Leo scratched his head and stood up, saying, well, basically, if you make a name for yourself, people will naturally respect you. This is Leo Blog, 15 years old, from the Blog family. Across from him, the teacher, after hearing this answer, felt his blood pressure rising rapidly. As if already used to this, he sighed and turned to the rest of the class. Anyone want to answer? In response, a red-haired student next to him, Leo, raised his hand. In ancient times, there was no way to gain the recognition of the gods. Chosen heroes went through sacred rituals, like the blood ritual. He finished. The teacher praised him without hesitation. Excellent. Truly, a genius. You are the greatest magic prodigy of our kingdom. Greaves traitor. He paused for a moment. The teacher continued to encourage the students in the class. We have high expectations for this year's Lumen entrance exam. Ignoring these words, our main character, Leo, was jolted awake when the teacher called on him. Then, he opened the book in front of him and pondered. It used to be so easy to meet the gods. The holy ritual to honor the great heroes who fought against Erebos. The gods bestowed upon the lower realm a miracle. The Hero Chronicles. But why do they treat me like I'm invisible? He thought, feeling dejected. He closed the book in his hands. Special note. This is the great hero, Kai, reborn. But he's currently in a state of being completely forgotten, lost in his thoughts as he climbs the stairs. Suddenly, the students rush towards the windows and look outside. His curiosity is piqued. They're here. Where? Where? Look, look, it's the Schrödinger family crest. Amazing. It's Sylvia Schrödinger. The excited students scream as if they've seen a celebrity. Meanwhile, in the hallway, a young woman, accompanied by numerous soldiers, calmly walks forward. Next, an announcement echoes through the classrooms. All students, please gather in the auditorium. Neuexistence. The prestigious Schneider family is visiting our school today. What a drama! Hearing this, Leo got up from his seat. Seeing that, his red-haired friend, Jordan, teased him. Leo, are you trying to impress the Schneider family? You think they'd even notice you? He quipped. In response, Leo gave him a look, as if he were looking at an idiot. I'm leaving. I'm not interested in that kind of thing. Unlike you, he added. Leo turned and walked straight out, without a moment's hesitation. Behind him, Jordan felt both embarrassed and angry. I'm not interested either. I just see Sirius Schneider as a rival, he yelled after Leo. But Leo only waved back, making Jordan practically breathe fire. I'm serious. Time quickly passed. The scene shifts to a training ground. Leo grips a wooden sword, preparing to train. He diligently hones his physical abilities. My body is definitely stronger in this life, he thinks to himself. Suddenly, beside him, a voice rings out. What are you thinking so deeply about? As the words fade, the figure of a woman appears before him. She swings her sword, her eyes locked on him like he's an enemy. Seeing this, Leo has no time to react, but to raise his own sword in defense. He blocks the blow, then tries to explain himself. Was interrupted by the woman in front of him. It's been a while since I've practiced my swordsmanship. You can't enter Rumen with just mediocre talent. This will be your final test. This will be the final test. She raised her sword and lunged at him again. He clenched his teeth as he braced himself against the heavy blow from his mother. Across from him, the woman saw her son trembling. After just one blow, she taunted him. Should I go a little harder? She began to put more power into each strike, and her speed increased dramatically, forcing Leo to struggle immensely, just to barely keep up. After only about 10 seconds, he's already panting like a dog, completely exhausted. Aren't you pushing me too hard, Mom? Leo complains. Unfortunately, his words have absolutely no effect on his mother. She even retorts, we're in the middle of a battle, and you still have time to chat. While blocking all of his attacks, she adds, what are you even talking about? With that, she intensifies her power once again, and lunges forward with lightning speed. But after this attack, she regrets it with a start. Oh no, I used too much force. If Leo couldn't dodge it, the madam thought to herself, bewildered. However, before she could finish her thought, at the very last moment, Leo tilted his head to the side, dodging the attack. His face remained completely calm. Then, while his mother was still stunned, he swiftly raised his sword, pointing it at her throat. He softly asked, are you all right, mother? The madam was still dumbfounded, seeing herself defeated so easily. In such a simple manner, she wondered just how deep this child's talent ran. After a couple of seconds of astonishment, the madam sat up, brushing the dust off her clothes, and asked Leo, do you still plan to go to Lumen? Lumen Academy? That's the Human Hero Academy. Out of the 4 hero academies for the different races, Hero Chronicle, this is where my sixth sensibility was recorded as the highest. Leo thought to himself and nodded in affirmation. Of course, seeing that, his mother happily continued. The Schrödinger family is visiting DNA and will be staying at our estate. The Schrödinger family is staying at our house? Leo asked, his voice full of curiosity. Yes, and while Mother isn't entirely thrilled about it, I'll ask Viscount Schrödinger. I'll ask them to pass on the Schrödinger aura technique to you. With that technique, you'll be strong enough to participate in the Lumen exam next year. Having said that, she happily patted her son's head, unaware that her words only made Leo chuckle inwardly. Oh, Mom, he thought, I plan on taking it this year. Time quickly passed. The scene shifted to the front of the mansion. Just then, as Leo's mother had mentioned, members of the Schneider family arrived from a luxurious black carriage. A girl named Celia gracefully stepped out. She was still wondering why she had to come here. Why did Uncle choose to stay in a place like this? Why not just rent out an entire hotel? I just want to focus on the Lumen entrance exam. Why come to such a small family? Questions swirled in Celia's mind. Beside her, her uncle, Jace, suddenly spoke. Aren't you curious about Leo? The one who said they wouldn't care about the Stinger family? Schneidinger retorted, echoing her words. Julia, equally arrogant, flipped her hair and said with disdain, a knight in training, who can't even use aura. Hardly worth watching, is he? Well, my perspective's a bit different, Jay muttered under his breath. Then, the two of them greeted the mansion's owners. It's a pleasure to meet you both. They bowed their heads, welcoming Jay and Schnee. The lady replied, I am Jay Bullock, Madam Bullock of the Bullock family. And this gentleman beside me is Yade Bullock, head of the Bullock family. Greet them, Julia. This is Marquis Bullock. Jay reminded her. Heeding his words, she composed herself. Place your hand on your chest and introduce yourself. My name is Celia Dinger. I look forward to your guidance. It's a pleasure to meet you, Celia, Venus said with a smile, thinking to herself how much the girl resembled her father and brother. Across from them, Celia, after taking a closer look at Vina, was stunned. For a moment, wait, black hair, red eyes. Could she also be a member of the clan? She wondered silently. As if reading her mind, the old man nodded and explained. Rena Borg, she's your aunt. The scene changed to the drawing room. Now the two sisters, Jenna and Jace, were enjoying tea and conversation. Jay was talking about visiting the school where Leo was studying. We stopped by the Royal DR Academy. It used to be bustling with students, but I heard Leo said he wasn't interested in us and went home. Hearing this, Lady Jinna burst into laughter. The prestigious Stinger family's reputation truly lives up to expectations. If that offended you, I apologize on behalf of my son. He's only interested in training. Curious, Jay asked what kind of child Leo was. What's he like? In response, the lady asserted that Leo possessed an unbelievable talent. Hearing this, the Duke's expression changed and asked seriously, do you truly believe that Leo has the right to inherit the Flame Ranger? And not just because he's your son? You believe he's more than worthy? Vina affirmed once again. Seeing this, Jay smiled. If you say so, then I have high hopes. However, I need to test the boy's potential myself. The scene shifted to Leo. He was sitting cross-legged, as if meditating. Suddenly, his right wrist began to shimmer, emitting a soft glow. Leo opened his eyes and whispered, finally, the vessel to receive it all is complete. The reason I haven't learned aura until now is because the moment one accepts aura, the body will naturally adapt to that type of mana field and lose the opportunity to accumulate mana and mental strength. In my past life, if I had mastered their power and nature completely, perfectly, if I had handled everything with absolute precision, perhaps I wouldn't have left behind those seeds of talent. This time I will completely master it. First, starting with the mana field, Leo told himself, when a voice called out from behind him, "Are you Leo Blog? You up ahead?" Hearing this, Leo turned around curiously. It turned out to be that girl, Celia. Seeing that Leo had noticed her, for some reason, she kindly offered, "From what I can see, your foundation is quite solid. I'll personally teach you swordsmanship." "How about it?" Celia said cheerfully. But her real intention is to impress her aunt, who also happens to be Leo's mother. Back to our protagonist. He doesn't immediately agree, but asks, "Who are you?" In response, Celia proudly introduces herself. "I am Celia Shinger, known throughout the world as the Swordswoman." "Is that so? Thanks for the offer, but I have no intention of being taught by someone weaker than me." La vipli non talen, leaving Celia speechless. "Are you saying you're stronger than me?" she asks, her face full of disbelief. Leo elaborates, "Well, in a fight to the death, you're stronger, because I don't use aura. But in a pure sword fight, then it's a different story," the protagonist said confidently, and looked at his own face again. Celia's eyes also showed anger. Next, she glanced at the weapons placed on one side, and casually picked up a sword from inside, and challenged him to a duel. With Leo, "Of course, if you're that confident, then fight me." After saying that, she chuckled inwardly. "You think, just because you have a strong aura that you're stronger than me? I'll show you the wall of reality." Next, Celia also stated her terms. If she won, Leo would have to be your servant for a week. "Hold on, what if I win?" Leo asked back, and Celia declared that if she lost, she would be his servant. And just like that, they both agreed to the duel. Teju quickly grabbed a wooden sword from the ground. "All right, let's begin." He dashed forward and unleashed a powerful slash with lightning speed. But Julia reacted swiftly. The moment Teju attacked, she raised her sword to block. However, after the clash, her expression changed slightly. She thought to herself, "He's fast, but not fast enough." With that thought, she lunged forward to attack. Teju, on the other side, did the same. Once again, Teju was a step faster. He swung his sword first, forcing Julia had to raise his sword defensively. With his second clash, Celia felt like he'd been hit by a speeding carriage. What kind of power is this? Celia screamed internally and immediately leaped back, trying to dissipate the force of the blow. This decision was spot on, because the next moment, Leo's sword slammed into the ground, shattering the floor into countless pieces. Back to Leo, seeing Celia jump back, he immediately dashed forward, giving his opponent no chance to counterattack. Faced with Leo's overwhelming pressure, Celia realized that he couldn't block the incoming attack. Next, Leo swung his sword, aiming directly at the swordswoman. However, it was blocked by a barrier of aura. "Isn't this supposed to be a pure sword fight?" Leo asked coldly. "I just reacted instinctively," Celia replied weakly. "It's all right, I'll still win," Leo said calmly, causing Celia to be unable to hide the astonishment on her face. "What? The difference between having aura and not having it. It's like heaven and earth," she exclaimed. However, Leo simply asked if she wanted to experience it for herself, then took off his bracelet and threw it on the ground. Look at this bracelet. Syria immediately recognized it. It was the magician's bracelet. That's insane. Syria gasped, seeing her surprised expression. Leo didn't offer much of an explanation. He just gave a slight smile. Then he charged forward, swinging the wooden sword in his hand at the barrier Syria had created. With this attack, even the barrier couldn't hold. It shattered into pieces. What the? That's brutal. This madman, Julia yelled internally. Time quickly passed. The scene shifted to Lady Jenna's location. She was strolling around with her younger brother, when suddenly, they spotted Leo lurking nearby. Seeing this, she called out to her son, Leo, come here and say hello. They are guests of our family. Hearing this, Leo looked towards the old man and bowed his head. Yam Leopold. In response, the old man extended his hand and said, I am Janger, your uncle, as you may know. It's a pleasure to meet you. He then firmly grasped Leo's hand. Meanwhile, Lady Jenna spoke up. By the way, have you met Julia yet? Hearing this question, Leo's face became slightly flustered as he glanced at Julia, who was lying on a stretcher, being carried outside by knights. My lady, what happened? It all happened so fast, the bewildered group murmured. Seeing his niece lying unconscious, Jay rushed over to inquire about what happened. The knight quickly and thoroughly explained the whole incident. The more Jay heard, the more unbelievable it seemed. That kid, he defeated Julia without using aura. He beat Syria? Impressive indeed. The man praised him. However, Leo didn't bask in the glory of his victory. He believed Syria lost because she underestimated him. Next, the man asked what agreement the two had made. Leo replied that the loser would become the winner's servant. So, Celia Dinger will be his maid for a week. Back to Jay's side. Just 3 seconds ago, his face was still full of joy. But, as soon as he heard his niece was about to become a maid, his face turned as dark as the bottom of a pot. A promise is important, but Celia is a member of the Dinger family. You can't make her work as a servant. I want you to break that promise. Instead, I'll give you another reward. For example, how about not letting your uncle make that offer? Leo cut him off. I refuse. This is a promise between Celia and me. As long as she bears the name Dinger, she must take responsibility. Even if I teach you the family's secret chi cultivation technique. Jay suggested his offer. It's a shame he doesn't realize the person standing before him is a legendary hero. So these kinds of cultivation techniques, he has a dime a dozen. After hearing this, Leo couldn't help but chuckle. A chi field technique used to cover up your granddaughter's defeat. You don't seem worthy for me to learn from. Being repeatedly rejected caused Jay to lose his cheerful composure. Leo, you brat. You just declared that you'll have a direct member of the Schneider family as your maid, and said that our family's chi field cultivation technique is worthless. Is that right? Yes, that's right. Leo answered confidently, without a trace of fear. Looking at his face, Jay's expression suddenly brightened as he asked, don't you think that declaration is a bit hasty? In response to this, Leo elaborated on his reasoning. I don't mean to offend the Schrödinger family, but if you, Jane offered me the family's aura control technique as a reward for defeating Syria, I would gladly accept it, but you offered this reward as a way to cover up Syria's mistake. That means you believe that if Syria hadn't lost her composure, she wouldn't have lost to me. However, even if Syria had been serious in the match, I still would have won. Leo spoke with a voice full of confidence, making Viscount Jace even more intrigued by him. More than that, he refused because he didn't like her attitude. How interesting if the Schrödinger family had a child like that. With that thought, he waved his hand, signaling to the knights beside him, and ordered them to take Julia to the servants' quarters to fulfill her promise. Then he turned to Leo and said, Leo, just between us, you can call me uncle. Yes. Leo nodded, pleasing him. After he left, Jace no longer needed to test Leo's potential. It's done. Sister, you asked me to teach Leo our family's aura cultivation technique. Correct? I think I can convince older brother so that Leo can learn the Phoenix breath. Time quickly passed. Until the next morning, the scene shifts to Leo's bedroom. Syria, dressed in a maid outfit, her face flushed with embarrassment, gritted her teeth and said, for 1 week, I will serve as young Master Leo's maid. I'm Syria. In the room, Leo was intently reading his book. Hearing the call, he glanced up, appraised her, and nodded, saying, "It suits you. The simple maid outfit, combined with your elegant demeanor. This combination is quite." His voice held a hint of something unspoken, making Julia tremble with irritation. "I know I'm handsome, but saying it like that is weird." "No, I didn't mean to offend you. Sorry, I have a friend who always praises beauty excessively. Maybe I was unconsciously influenced by them," Leo replied. Then he sighed, remembering the words of a close friend from his past life. "When peace comes to the world, I will dedicate my life to spreading beauty to everyone." Everyone. That's what his comrade always used to say. Julia, hearing this, calmed down a bit. A friend who truly loves beauty must be wonderful. The problem is they're too sincere. Leo complained internally and remembers a past event. His beauty-loving teammate had asked the two girls in their team to model for his paintings. Although stern, Rekinus had a more refined demeanor than anyone. "And Luna, for the sake of art, could you model nude for me? I even brought my sketchbook," he said excitedly. In response to this statement was a beating from the two girls. Back inside the team, the story shifts to Julia. Seeing Leo clutching a book in his hands, she became curious. "That book looked like a special training manual. What are you reading up ahead?" Leo, hearing this, looked at the book in his hands and casually replied, "Oh, this one? I read it a lot when I was a kid. It's the legendary hero." Syria was surprised to hear that, because she knew it was an ancient fairy tale. But Leo is only 15 years old. Syria walked further, observing all the books on the shelves. Then she remarked, "It seems you really like the legendary hero. Even scholars who research great heroes can't compare to your knowledge." She marveled, referring to the number of books Leo had collected. But he simply replied, "I unintentionally overheard their conversation." Celia reached for a book, muttering to herself, "There are so many books about Kai, especially." Responding to her comment, Leo said with a reminiscent look, "Among the great hero's achievements, there are some with unknown origins. I think they might be his." Contrary to his opinion, Julia shook her head in disagreement. "He must be a fraud, trying to steal credit from the real heroes. That's what most people think." "Of course, I also think that way," she said, placing the book back on the shelf. "So you think the same as me about him?" Leo whispered softly. "What?" Celia asked, having not heard him clearly. But Leo wasn't dumb enough to repeat himself. Instead, he changed the subject. "So, let's start training after breakfast." Celia, upon hearing this, had a gleam in her eyes as she inquired, "Young master, if it's all right, could I train with you?" As she spoke, she chuckled inwardly. "I want to discover the secret of your strength." In response to her question, Leo readily agreed, because he didn't really have any secrets to his strength. "It'll be tough to keep up. Are you sure you want to try?" Leo's voice held a hint of disdain, provoking Celia to shout in indignation. "I am Celia Stinger." Despite her bold words, after she began training with Leo, Celia, she's just realizing how intense this training is. They've barely started, but she's already drenched in sweat and breathing like a bull. Seeing her exhaustion, our protagonist casually remarks, "When your stamina reaches its limit, your reflexes slow down and your movements become sloppy. That's when you leave your back exposed like this." He turns towards Syria. She looks at Leo, eyes full of suspicion. "Pushing your body this hard, you call this training?" "Yeah, these kids seem way too weak." Leo shakes his head dismissively. "For me, after 5,000 years of development, compared to before, aura techniques have significantly improved. But physical training is often neglected. Aura is the power that optimizes the body's physical strength. Ultimately, strengthening the body also improves aura. As a result, they don't value physical training." Now let's talk about Julia. After resting for a bit, she managed to pull herself together and get up to attack again. "Don't underestimate me," the white-haired girl shouted. She lunged towards Leo to attack. But with her snail-like attack speed, Leo simply swung his sword once and easily sent Julia flying. And at this point, she was on the verge of tears. "Why? Why can't I win?" she cried out, her voice filled with frustration. Seeing this, the main character calmly walked towards her and replied, "Frustrating, isn't it? Then take this." As he spoke, he handed Celia a weighted bracelet. The moment Celia touched it, The sheer weight forced her hands to slam onto the ground. This is a gravity-enchanted bracelet. Wear it during your training from tomorrow onwards. Leo cracked a sly smile, enjoying the thought of someone sharing his suffering. Time quickly passed. The scene changed to an empty lot. As the two youngsters trained, suddenly, Mr. Jace silently observed them from behind. Tim, he thinks, this will be a good experience for Syria. Before entering Lumen, a test of pride beforehand wouldn't be a bad thing. With that thought, he shouts to Leo, Leo, I plan to ask the head of the family to let you inherit the technique. The phoenix's breath on the other side. The protagonist is startled upon hearing this, because he's heard of this technique before. The phoenix's breath, the origin of all techniques, the secret art of the Schrödinger family. I've heard that only those recognized by the family can inherit it. Leo thinks to himself. Meanwhile, Julia, overhearing this, immediately retorts, I won't agree that easily. Jay nodded in agreement and explained. Right. So, there will be one condition. You have to pass this year's Lumen entrance exam, he said calmly. But Celia, upon hearing the condition, couldn't help but panic. On Leo's behalf. What? The Lumen entrance exam is a practical combat test. You know that. Someone like Leo, who can't use aura, it would be too dangerous for him to participate. Why are we even talking about Leo? But facing this condition, Leo wasn't afraid. Instead, he felt an indescribable excitement. Real combat? That's right. I guess I don't have any other choice. Seeing Leo lost in thought, Viscount Jace asked, What are your thoughts on this? Leo responded, giving the Viscount a confident nod. My parents said they would respect my decision. So, I'll participate. Leo's answer didn't surprise Viscount Jace too much. Just as I expected, he was already planning to take the entrance exam this year. Now, with even more motivation, Leo threw himself back into training. Well, we've rested for a bit. Now let's continue, he said, and he resumed his run. Who said I couldn't keep up? Celia shouted. Time quickly passed. 1 week later, the scene shifted to DNA Academy. Today is the entrance exam for Lumen Academy. Everyone has arrived since early morning, eagerly awaiting the test, and the appearance of Julia naturally draws everyone's attention. Isn't that Celia Schrödinger? It's amazing to see the swordswoman in person. Who's that next to her? Curious whispers fill the air. Meanwhile, Celia glances at Leo and asks, Are you nervous, young master? Not at all, Leo replies calmly. He gives her a teasing look, before turning to Julia and saying, But shouldn't you mind your language? The sudden reprimand makes Julia flinch. Then, a voice calls out from behind them, Miss Syria. Hearing this, both of them turned towards the source of the sound, and they discovered that the speaker was none other than the red-haired guy, Jordan. Seeing Leo standing next to Julia, he was utterly astonished. Leo Bob, what are you doing here? You can't even use aura, Jordan asked in confusion, then quickly turned to greet Celia. Miss Celia, it's so good to see you. How are you? Across from them, both of them just stared at Jordan, as if he were a fool. This made Jordan flustered, unsure of what to say next. Finally, he had to introduce himself. I'm Greaves Trader. I greeted you when you visited the school last time. The greatest magic genius of Dern. Turning towards Celia. Before the red-haired young man could finish his sentence, she interrupted him. Sorry, but I don't remember you at all. So, goodbye. As she said that, she pulled Leo's hand to run away. But at that very moment, another voice called out. Celia, long time no see. The voice was so loud that it caught the attention of everyone in the hall. The owner of the voice was a young couple. Both of them had distinctive silver hair. Very unique. The older brother was iPad Lee Welling, 16 years old, and the younger sister was Chelsea Lee Welling, 14 years old. Both of them came from the Lee Welling family. Who are they? Leo asked curiously, but seeing the two of them, Syria unconsciously clenched her fists and explained, those are the Lee Hain brothers. From the noble hero family of the Golden Empire. They're members of the Lee Hain family. They're participating in this exam as well, so we can't lose, Leo. The Schrödinger family. Losing to the Lee Hain family is unacceptable. She spoke, with eyes that lit up like car headlights. But I'm from the Bloomer family, Leo replied innocently. Next, the brothers approached Pilla and greeted her once again. Long time no see, Syria. In response to this greeting, the swordswoman nodded. Indeed, it's been a while, Lee Hyung-T. Who's that next to you? iPad asks, glancing at Leo. Answering him, the swordswoman states in a clear voice. He's a member of the Marquis family, in the Delrot Kingdom. Leo blog of the blog family, from the opposing faction. Little sister, Chelsea immediately loses interest in Leo. Just a nobody, she says coldly. Her brother, iPad, shares the same sentiment. After the brief introductions, they quickly take their leave, but not without a parting shot at Syria. Syria, the top spot is definitely mine. Let's go, Chelsea. Yes, brother, she replies. The sheer arrogance of the two annoys the swordswoman. Those annoying guys, I'll definitely beat them. Just as he finished speaking, a loud sound suddenly rang out, attracting everyone's attention. Following their gaze, on the high platform, a young teacher appeared. It seems everyone is here. My name is Amy. This is Jaron Amy, a professor from the Lumen Academy down below. And the swordswoman, Julia. Hearing that name, Siola's expression immediately changed. She muttered to herself, could that be Amy, the evil-eyed sorcerer? Beside her, Lang, seeing her surprised expression, asked curiously, who is that? Hearing this, Julia was even more surprised, since Leo didn't know the professor. You really don't know? He's a hero recorded in the Hero Chronicles. Her voice was full of admiration, making Leo regard the man with more respect. Someone called a hero of this era. The mana in his left eye must be an evil eye, Leo thought to himself. From his perspective, Andy's left eye was constantly overflowing with energy. Unaware of Leo's thoughts, Professor, Andy began to explain the test. The test will include combat against others and monster extermination. Each of you will participate in these two tests, one after the other. This is such a hassle, he thought. As he spoke, he casually set the papers in his hand ablaze. He then pulled out a book from his inner pocket and began to channel his power. Open, Hero's Journal, Andy's World. Chapter 1, The Beast Forest. Suddenly, beneath everyone's feet, a giant magic circle appeared, radiating immense energy. Above them, Professor Andy coldly addressed the group. I will not tolerate any delays. We'll combine everything and do this all at once. Back with Leo. He was busy refreshing his memory about this so-called Hero's Journal. The Hero's Record isn't just a simple archive. Its true value lies in storing the trials that past heroes have faced and recreating their worlds. Moreover, by conquering a hero's world, one can inherit the powers of those heroes. It's practically a hero training system. Back in the real world, after they regained consciousness, they found themselves inside a dark forest. The atmosphere was ominous. Then, Andy's voice boomed from the sky. This is the Beast Forest. Your test is survival. You can cooperate or eliminate each other. Do whatever it takes to survive. If you want to give up or quit, just break the orb you're holding and you'll return. That's all. His voice disappeared after that. While everyone was still confused about this forest, Leo felt a familiar presence. This place, it's still the same. Before it was corrupted by the monster queen, Silona, this was the forest of the fairies. Some of the weaker-willed students nearby began to panic. I want to go home, someone cried out. It's just an illusion. How pathetic, another student complained. However, unlike them, Leo had a completely different perspective. He's wrong. Even though this world is recreated from Professor Andy's memories, but everything that happens here is real. If you find yourselves in a life-threatening situation, you'll actually die. Just as he thought that, from within the forest, a blue arrow of light shot out, straight towards Leo. Fortunately, he was on high alert and managed to dodge it just in time, and the person who shot that wind arrow was none other than that girl Chelsea. Seeing Leo dodge her arrow, she stepped out and said, "We've met before, haven't we? It would be fun to take down someone from the Schrodinger family," the girl said confidently. But Leo had to remind her of his own identity. "I belong to the Blogger family." "But you were with Celia earlier," Chelsea exclaimed. Immediately, she cast her wind cutter magic, forming an energy scythe in her hand. Even with Leo's experience, he was slightly surprised by this skill. It was a magic that didn't exist in the past. But the fundamentals are still the same, he thought, tightening his grip on his sword. He was ready for anything. Meanwhile, seeing Leo's composure standing before her, Chelsea seemed annoyed and sighed. You're still calm even with me in front of you? With that she spun her scythe and hurled it forward. Like a buzzsaw, it flew towards him. However, this attack wasn't enough to trouble Leo. With a simple swing of his sword, he easily deflected the scythe backward. Seeing him do it so effortlessly, Chelsea's expression changed slightly. He's quite skilled, but I can't sense any aura being used. Is it a type of aura that's hard to detect? She wondered to herself. Meanwhile, Leo made a suggestion. That attack was too simple. Why don't we cooperate instead? This test usually gives higher scores to those who survive the longest. As a mage, wouldn't it be beneficial to have a swordsman by your side? He smiled persuasively. Unfortunately, his words fell on deaf ears. To Chelsea, it was like talking to a brick wall. Sorry, but as a battle mage, my survival is more important. You say my attack is simple? There was a hint of anger in her voice. But who knows if Leo could read her mood or not? He casually admitted it anyway. Are you listening? For a wind spell, that's way too basic. In terms of power, that is, on the other side, listening to Leo's lecture, the girl's eyes went wide. Are you lecturing me about magic? A direct descendant of the Lee Welly family? Let's see how you handle this simple attack. Wind blade, wind arrow. As she spoke, she swung her staff, firing several blades and arrows straight at Leo. But, right after attacking, she realized Leo had vanished from his spot. When did he disappear? I can't sense a trace of mana. Why? She panicked, trying to understand, before suddenly, Leo's figure materialized right in front of her. He punched her in the stomach, hard enough to send her crumpling to the ground. Well then, I suppose I should politely ask for your cooperation. Leo then bound her to a tree trunk, tying her securely to a wooden post. He proceeded to build a fire, a sinister expression on his face. Time quickly passed until nightfall. Now, Chelsea slowly regained consciousness. She found herself tied to a wooden stake. Below her, a bonfire blazed fiercely. The sight, it feels like she's about to be offered as a sacrifice. What is this? Chelsea asks in a panic. Seeing that she's awake, Leo continues with his proposal. Will you cooperate with me? In response to his words, Chelsea grits her teeth, a look of disgust on her face. Never. I don't need anyone but my brother. Wind blade, she shouts, simultaneously activating her magic to cut the ropes. However, at that moment, on her wrist, a miniature red magic circle appears, preventing her magic from activating. This is a magic sealing array, Leo says softly. But since I don't have much mana, I can't hold this for very long. In response to his words, Chelsea replied, this kind of magic is easy for me to break. However, Leo let out a cold laugh. You think I'd let you concentrate? As he spoke, flames began to spread towards Chelsea's body. A part of her dress caught fire. Wait, stop. It's hot, she screamed. But Leo continued to demand her cooperation. Left with no other choice, Chelsea had to accept his proposal. Fine, I'll do it. But Leo wasn't foolish enough to release her immediately. Instead, he made her swear. On her family's honor. Fine, y swear. I swear on the honor of the Lee Wellen family that I will cooperate. Stop it and say those words. Tears welled up in the young girl's eyes. Leo, climbing ahead, laughed maniacally. How naive, he thought. She's still just a child. With that thought, he yanked the rope in his hand, sending Chelsea plummeting down below. Then Leo casually extended his hand, catching her and saying in a warm voice, I look forward to working with you. The scene shifted to outside, where the Lee Wellen mage was. While the students were struggling inside, outside, the teachers were observing them through a monitor, monitoring their progress and evaluating them. But the more he watched, the more Professor Andy. It's infuriating. These low-ranking fools choosing to compete is utterly stupid. Those who quickly grasp the situation are those two, Seo Layong Schneider and Lee Ji-hai Wellington. The Empire truly has a bright future. The young professor praised them, upon seeing the two cooperating to take down the monster together. Next, Andy turned to another screen and spotted Leo and Chelsea, also joining forces to fight a giant bull. Wait, isn't that Leo Blog? What he did at the campfire earlier was quite strange, but to convince Chelsea Wellington to cooperate is already a huge plus. He doesn't have Seo Ayang's strength or Lee Ji-hai's brilliance, but he's an unexpected factor, unpredictable. The young professor murmured softly and watched the monitor with interest, observing Leo's progress. Back to our main character. Despite being forced to cooperate with Leo, Chelsea couldn't help but be impressed. After witnessing his skills, having a knight around is pretty convenient, she thought. Let me ask you something. What kind of aura are you using? This whole time, I haven't sensed any mana from you at all, she asked curiously. The main character didn't bother hiding it and answered directly. I don't know how to use an aura. Hearing that, Chelsea felt like her brain was short-circuiting. What? How can you do that without any presence? The essence of things is what truly matters. That applies to wine magic as well. What do you think the essence of wind magic is? To answer your question, Chelsea unleashed a series of wind-breaking spells, creating razor-sharp blades of air. They shot out behind her, instantly dissecting a monster trying to sneak attack them. From behind, she gave a mocking smile. Lecturing the Lee Wellen clan about magic? How foolish. Leo didn't seem angered at all. Instead, he continued, I commend your power, but your application is completely wrong. As he spoke, Leo quickly stepped forward, with an air of a lecturing professor. His words earned him a slight scolding from Chelsea. Honestly, she started. Before she could finish, Leo suddenly noticed something and signaled her to stop. Wait, stop, he whispered. Chelsea noticed it too. Why did Leo tell her to stop? Because right there, in front of them, lay several desiccated corpses. They looked like they had withered away. That looks like a mummy, Chelsea said, frowning. Up ahead, Leo mentioned that he had seen something like this before. Now I understand the condition for passing this test. Leo muttered to himself. But just then, he suddenly felt something. Something's targeting us. There's no time to think. Leo instantly lunges forward, grabbing Chelsea tightly and pulling her aside. His decisive action saves them both from an unknown attack. In the distance, several figures approach. Too bad. I wanted to take down Chelsea Lee Wellen before she got eliminated. The guy next to her is nothing special. The voice belongs to the red-haired Jordan. It seems he's teamed up with other students to eliminate strong contenders. All right, let's attack together. He shouts his command. The surrounding students rush forward, like rabid dogs. Well, these guys shouldn't try to fight Leo up close. Because how could they possibly go toe-to-toe with him? In fact, immediately, Leo gave one of the guys charging at him a punch right in the face. It sent him sprawling on the ground, dead as a doornail. Seeing their buddy taken down so quickly, the surrounding guys panicked. They didn't dare attack recklessly anymore. Back me up, Chelsea, Leo called out. Why yeah, okay, Chelsea replied, but her body was still trembling uncontrollably from the dangerous situation. Now back to Jordan's group. After a few seconds of shock, they quickly regained their composure and yelling at each other. What are you doing? Attack now. Following the order, the group desperately charges into the attack, unaware that the mastermind behind it all, Tidiak, while they're fighting Leo's group, is secretly making his escape. I can't fall like this. I'll find a way out. Different, he muttered to himself, and dashed forward. At the same time, Julia, not far away, spotted him and headed in the opposite direction. And so, the two of them, Julia and Lee Whelan, encountered two others, Leo and Chelsea, along with a group of defeated students, lying scattered on the ground. Seeing her older brother, Chelsea exclaimed joyfully, "Brother!" She rushed to hug iPad tightly. iPad, in turn, comforted her, asking, "Chelsea, are you all right?" Nearby, the swordswoman, Syria, asked curiously, "How did you two end up together?" I suggested we team up, but that stubborn guy refused. So, I convinced her pretty well, Leo said with a sly grin, making Syria feel like things weren't as simple as he made them sound. "What are you planning this time?" Syria asked with a cautious expression. Then, for some reason, Leo started helping the people he had just knocked down back up. This made Chelsea curious, and she asked, "Why is he helping them up?" To this question, Leo explained that competition was no longer necessary, because they would conquer this world together. The beast forest is currently in an abnormal state. Do you see those corpses? It seems all the moisture in their bodies has been drained. That's not the only strange thing here. In this monster-infested forest, aren't there too few monsters? Leo shrugged and replied, and only after hearing his words Did Julia realize the problem and exclaimed, "Now that you mention it, I notice it too. It's like they've been eaten by something. There must be a high-level monster around, scaring the other monsters into hiding." Hearing this, the white-haired young man, Lee Wellen, nodded in agreement. "I see. The first achievement of an ambitious hero is to defeat a high-level monster." As soon as he finished speaking, the entire group felt a terrifying, murderous aura focused on them. Their faces were drenched in sweat. "Looks like it's here," Leo muttered, returning to Jordan's location. Jordan was using some kind of magic, a bright light, to illuminate his path. "I'll eliminate you no matter what, Leo." He gritted his teeth as he noticed a dark figure blocking his way. Seeing this, the mage raised his staff closer, trying to get a better look at the shadow. Then, realizing it was a corpse, he stumbled backward in shock. "What the?" he cried out just as something slimy dripped from above onto his staff. Curiosity piqued. The mage looked up. He took a look, and he wished he hadn't. The sight was terrifying. Right above him, a gigantic spider, staring at him with hungry eyes. The scene shifts outside to the main hall. A few students, whose tests ended early due to the danger, are bragging to each other. "I took down like 15 or 16 of those things." The brown-haired boy boasts excitedly. "Me too." The one across from him nods in agreement. At that moment, Professor Andy looks at them with a hopeful expression. "We've had about 500 so far, all failures." Hearing this, another professor looks panicked and quickly interjects. But Professor Andy insists, "No matter what, we have to choose around 100 people, just like the other regions. There are only 50 examinees left in the test." In response to his words, the handsome gentleman didn't change his mind one bit. "If they don't meet my standards, I'm willing to fail them all. Headmaster, Kayleen put me in charge of this exam." Understanding this, he focused back on the monitor, which displayed Leo's image, and thought to himself, "A true hero is only found in times of hardship." Leo Bobby must have sensed the anomaly within the forest. But can he overcome this trial? The teacher wondered curiously. Back with Leo's group, they were regrouping and quickly moved forward. "Damn, it's pitch black," a long-haired student in the group complained. Following that, the swordswoman Julia, leading the group, suddenly stopped. She signaled for the group to wait. "There's something up ahead. Everyone, get ready to fight." With that said, she began focusing mana into the tip of her sword. It emitted a soft, red glow. Soft and quick, they spotted Ciola being held by something, being restrained by something. "What is that?" "The one behind is the real one," the iPad guy called out a warning. Next, he was about to use his magic to attack. But before his spell could form, Leo reached out to stop him, saying to cheat in. "Guru, snap out of it. Break the crystal." Hearing this, Jordan gritted his teeth, and with a burst of determination, shattered the glass stone in his hand. Immediately after, his body transformed into a beam of light, and he was teleported away. The giant spider was filled with frustration. Its prey was practically in its mouth, and yet it escaped. Next, with Jordan out of the way, iPad was free to unleash his magic. He prepared to attack. With a shout of wind fong, he unleashed a barrage of blades, sharp gusts of wind slicing through the air towards the giant spider, instantly drenched in blood. Despite the heavy bleeding, its wounds are healing at a visible speed. Seeing this regeneration rate, the group's faces turned grim. "This isn't enough?" "Just as I thought." "This is the Spider Princess, Tarantula," Leo mutters to himself. It seems like he recognizes the monster. He knows what we're up against. Elsewhere, the axe-wielding student tightens his grip on his weapon and charges into close combat. "Damn it, take this," he yells. But before his weapon can connect with the giant spider, he was sent flying by one of its legs. Meanwhile, the swordswoman Julia didn't have time to worry about the guy who just got kicked. She mustered her strength and said, "I'll finish this in one blow." As soon as she finished speaking, she began to gather a powerful energy at the tip of her sword. Once fully charged, Julia unleashed the energy like a laser beam straight ahead. It pierced right through the spider's head. But, you have to admit, this spider's life force was incredible. Despite having a hole blasted through its forehead, in just a few seconds, the wound completely regenerated. This unbelievable sight unfolded before her eyes, leaving her completely stunned. "No way!" Julia exclaimed in disbelief. She saw that her attack had no effect. Then the iPad-wielding mage stepped forward, ready to display his destructive power. The difference between a mage and a knight was like night and day. He confidently announced his spell, Bombardment. He unleashed a barrage of wind blades, each with terrifying force, hurtling towards the giant spider, tearing into its flesh. But for the Spider Queen, this level of damage was insufficient. The only thing it accomplished was to enrage the monstrous spider. So far, 8 had inflicted the most damage, causing it immense pain. So, it immediately redirects its hatred towards him. Seeing this, his younger sister, Chelsea, from behind, quickly uses her magic to attack and save her brother's life. At the last moment, he only suffers a minor injury to his arm. "Are you okay?" Chelsea asks. "Thank you, Chelsea." iPad replies, then speaks about the student with the axe. Seeing that neither Julia nor iPad could do anything. "What is this monster?" Despair fills his face. "What is this monster?" he asks fearfully. With his knowledge, Leo steps forward to explain to everyone. This is a monstrous regenerative ability. That's the daughter of Super Lasna, Queen of Tartarus, a monster in Erebos' army that ravaged the fairy forest. Hearing this, everyone around turns to stare at Leo, as if he were an alien. Meanwhile, our protagonist is reminiscing. The mana in Ambi's left eye, it really is the Fairy King's mana. Tarantula, ruler of the cursed wilderness, destroyed the fairy forest and ate the Fairy King's arm. During the battle with it, I thought Luna had killed Tarantula, but it seems the Fairy King's right arm, inside its stomach, saved its life. More accurately, the limitless life energy from that hand, the ring of life, turned towards the group. Their fighting spirit was reignited. If this monster is the key to this test, then I will defeat it. "Ah," 8 exclaimed. "Who said that?" Julia retorted. And then, both of them unleashed a barrage of skills, bombarding the giant spider. However, seeing their actions, Leo knew it was futile. It will just keep regenerating until your mana runs out. Leo warned coldly. "So, what do you suggest?" Celia asked, and Leo replied, "We need 2 people to work together." Hearing those words, iPad just flat out rejected me. "Rejected? I'll be the one to get the highest score." "No, it'll be me," Celia yelled from up ahead. Seeing these 2 idiots completely ignoring the situation at hand and bickering with each other, she shouted, "If we don't get through this hero world, we'll all be eliminated." Hearing her words, the 2 were startled and realized the problem. They quickly dropped their argumentative attitudes. Then, iPad offered his opinion. "Even if we cooperate, it'll take a lot of time to prepare an attack strong enough to take it down instantly. But only 2 people, Celia and I, to hold the monster back long enough." Hearing this, the swordswoman, Celia, fell silent. And while everyone was still unsure what to do, Leo stepped forward to take on the responsibility. "I'll do it," he said with a confident look on his face. However, Celia didn't believe him one bit. "What? That's suicide. You don't even know how to use aura." "I know, but I can still hold it off for 5 minutes," Leo said calmly, as if it wasn't a big deal. Behind him, the mage with the iPad asked worriedly, "What if the 7th form attack fails?" Hearing that, Leo replied that he didn't think that would happen, because fire and wind were always good friends. They coordinate really well. His words made the 2 of them, Syria and iPad, start to look at each other, as if they were thinking something. Next, while they were still thinking, Leo rushed to attack the spider. He could be seen, gripping his axe tightly, and swinging it right into its mouth. The spider cried out in pain. Back to Leo, looking at the monster. It didn't take long for it to regenerate back to normal. He thought to himself, "Just as I thought, this is the limit without using aura." Thinking about this, he tried to find a more effective way to stall for time. Leo quickly called out to the sorceress, Chelsea, who was behind him. "Chelsea, use your wind magic to blow all the weapons around here towards me." As he spoke, he jumped to the side, dodging a giant spider leg that had just lunged at where he was standing. Hearing his request, the sorceress anxiously reminded him, "If you move that fast, you'll get hurt." Without time for a lengthy explanation, Leo assured her, "I'll catch them, so don't worry." Just hurry. Which weapon? Chelsea asked. Anything will do, Leo replied. Following his instructions, the sorceress quickly used her wind magic to send a weapon flying towards him. Up ahead, Leo, listening to the sound of the approaching weapons, could vaguely guess what they were. Based on the sounds, one was a curved short sword, the other a double-edged long sword. With that in mind, he channeled his strength into his legs, launching himself into the air. Simultaneously, he reached out, firmly grasping the two weapons that had just been sent to him. Then, using the momentum of his descent, Leo unleashed a series of sword strikes. He slashed at the giant spider's legs, severing them into pieces. However, under the strain of his devastating power, the swords could only withstand a few blows before shattering into fragments. Seeing this, Leo immediately requested more weapons from Chelsea. Then he shouted, without him having to say a word. The mage girl seamlessly coordinated with him and blasted away every incoming weapon. And so, our protagonist began to showcase his exceptional weapon skills. He relentlessly attacked the spider, giving it no time to react. Chelsea couldn't help but be astonished. He looks to be our age, but this scene, he's like a war god, Chelsea thought to herself. Meanwhile, the iPad mage witnessed this spectacle and no longer dared to underestimate Leo. So, he's not just some weakling, he muttered, turning back to Leo. While pummeling the giant spider, Leo received a minor scratch on his face. He felt the warm blood trickling down his cheek. Leo grinned excitedly. I still feel it. If I can't even take down a bug like this, those guys will laugh at me in the afterlife. Forget it. He gripped his sword tightly, his muscles tense. He swung with all his might, slashing at the monster. The result? His sword shattered into pieces. As usual, Leo called for another sword, but he was met with Chelsea's horrified expression. She explained that was the last sword. The unexpected news wiped the excitement off Leo's face, leaving him dumbfounded. Fortunately, at that moment, the swordswoman, Syria, behind them, had finished preparing her skill. Suddenly, her entire body was overflowing with intense energy. She let out a yell, giving Leo a heads up. How are you going to dodge this, you flea-ridden monster? Julia roared. She swung her sword forward with all her might, unleashing a terrifying pillar of fire. Before the spider could even react, it was turned into roasted spider. After it was obliterated, everyone received a notification. Andy's world. Prologue. Wild forest cleared. Hearing this, Celia seemed to lose all her strength and collapsed to the ground. It's over. She breathed a sigh of relief. Then she turned to look at Leo and exclaimed, he's actually holding that monster back for 5 minutes. Leo, that's amazing. The swordswoman praised him, but before she could finish, the mage, Chelsea, cut her off. Incredible. Amazing. You're like a hero from a story. Really? Leo asked breathlessly. Because he's not just like one. He's a true hero. In response, Chelsea looked at him with admiration, like he was an idol. That's right. I want to be a battle mage. So, I really want to learn more about close combat. Close combat is my biggest weakness. Please teach me. The swordswoman, Julia, seeing Chelsea eagerly volunteer for my training, I couldn't help but chuckle inwardly at these naive lambs. They have no idea what hellish training awaits them. I truly hope everyone gets to experience my training, at least once in their life, she said with a wicked grin, leaving the mage girl behind her, completely clueless. Back to Leo. Ignoring their chatter, he reached down and picked up the ring lying on the ground. A ring? This is the dropped item? He wondered. Then, from within the ring, a beam of light shot out, and from within the light, a tiny figure with wings on its back appeared before him. Looking at the face of the being before him, Leo immediately recognized him as the prince. Silas, do you remember me? I'm Kai, Leo asked softly, responding to the voice. The prince gave a slight smile, as if in agreement. Then, he transformed into a beam of light and entered the ring. Back to Leo's perspective, he saw his friend had returned to the ring. He thought to himself, it seems he's become the fairy king, thanks to the treasure that Ambi found. He must have received the mana eye. Just as he thought that, the space around them began to collapse. A strange sound echoed as a countdown began. Returning from the trial zone in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Reward for passing the Fairy King's Oath. A mysterious dark figure suddenly appeared before Leo and whispers to him, The shadowy figure's face is obscured, but upon seeing this face, Leo's eyes glaze over, as if recognizing who it is. Time quickly passes. The scene shifts to a bustling town. An old man is looking at a report in his hands, muttering to himself. It seems the exam in the Western Territory is over. This old man is Alien Biden, a master swordsman, and the principal of Lumen Academy. Beside him, a woman who looks like his secretary is also troubled by this information. Is it over already? But there are still so many people in other areas. So, how many people did Master Andy pass? The secretary asked hesitantly. Hearing that, Alan glanced back at the report and exclaimed in surprise, "Whoa! If it were Andy, the number would be quite significant. 40 people passed? That's a lot." The secretary sighed. However, the headmaster already has a plan in place. Don't be so stressed. I thought only about 10 would make it. As he spoke, Alan burst into laughter, leaving the secretary speechless. Honestly, she muttered. Then, her curiosity piqued, she asked, "I guess Shirio or iPad would be in first place. So, who actually took the top spot?" In response to her question, Alan said, "I heard it was a tough decision. And someone has been nominated to represent the freshmen." Hearing this, the secretary couldn't help but be surprised because she knew how strict Professor Ambrosia was. Professor Andy actually nominated someone? That's unexpected. So, is it Sirius Schrödinger or iPad Lewell? It's a name I've never heard before. To think Andy holds him in such high regard. I wonder what kind of student he is. I'm submitting Leo Blogs as the freshman representative. Reason: he has the potential to become a hero. Time quickly passed. The scene changes to a giant bathhouse. At this moment, our protagonist, Leo, is relaxing in the bath. These kinds of aches and pains need to be healed with care and time. "This is wonderful," Leo said softly, leaning back against the wall. And at that moment, inside his head, the mysterious black shadow's voice echoed once more. Before, the reward for passing was the Fairy King's Oath. When conquering the world of a living hero, there's usually no reward. Yet, somehow, only he received one. Only him. Leo wondered silently. But before he could figure anything out, suddenly, Lady Jenna entered the bathroom. He was stunned for a moment. "Mother, what's wrong?" he asked, and in response, Rena's expression turned serious. "Leo, do you know why I was expelled from the S family? It wasn't a Schrödinger situation. You saved the squad. But Mom lost her S-Dinger flames. However, Mom never regretted her decision, Leo. I want you to use your strength and talents for what's right. And congratulations on getting into Lumen Academy." Saying these words, the lady gave a hearty laugh. Time quickly passed. The scene changes to a luxurious city. This is Lemuria City, home to Lumen Academy. And now, through a spatial gate, Leo and his group have arrived. "Welcome to Lemuria City. Please make sure you have all your belongings before exiting the gate." A voice echoed from the other side. Leo immediately turned his gaze towards a cluster of buildings. On the other side of the river, he whispered, "That's the center of the world, Lemuria. And that's Lumen Academy." At the same time, Uncle Jay's voice rang out from behind him. "How was your crossing, Leo? Congratulations on passing the entrance exam." As he spoke, he extended his hand in greeting. Leo quickly reciprocated the gesture. "Thank you, Uncle. But what brings you here?" In response, instead of answering directly, Jay posed a question. "Our family has been locked in an endless debate for the past month. Do you know why?" Leo guessed the issue and replied, "They've reached a decision about the inheritance. The Phoenix's breath. It's not quite right. Even though your sister is no longer a member of the clan, you are still her son. Not to mention, the elders were quite impressed that you passed the renowned entrance exam of the Western District." He then pulled a golden key from inside his pocket and handed it to Leo. He instructed him, "This is the key to a subspace. Open it." Upon hearing this, Leo held the key in front of him and turned it. The air shimmered as if a lock was being opened. Then, before his eyes, a mystical grimoire appeared. Emanating unusually noble aura. Seeing this, Jay asked Leo to place a drop of his blood onto the book. Following the instructions, Leo quickly bit his fingertip and let a few drops of blood fall onto the book. Immediately after, the book emitted a brilliant light. Then, on the page, strange and unfamiliar characters appeared. It's hard to understand now, but only you can read this book. Learning the secret techniques of the Schrödinger clan is no easy feat, but I have a feeling you will master it quickly. Congratulations! You are now a member of the Schrödinger clan. As he spoke, he also giving the main character a reassuring pat on the back. Next, the scene shifts to a roadside cafe. This is where Leo and Syria had agreed to meet, and while he's still looking around, searching for her, suddenly, he bumps into a girl about his age, causing the stack of books she was carrying to scatter all over the place. Sorry, I wasn't looking where I was going, the girl says frantically. She quickly gathers her books and hurries away, but perhaps in her haste, while picking up her belongings, she drops a student ID card, and Leo finds it. Close Miller, a freshman at Lumen Academy. Leo murmurs as he looks at the card. Putting that aside, he quickly made his way inside a shop. Inside, the sword woman, Julia, had been waiting for a while. Seeing Leo finally arrive, she couldn't help but complain. Leo, you're so late. We have to get your uniform, textbooks, and so many other things. Sorry, I had to meet with Uncle Jay, Leo said apologetically. Hearing his words, Julia's face lit up. So, have they made a decision? She asked. What was the outcome? Across from her, Leo didn't keep her in suspense. He immediately showed her his ability. Suddenly, from behind his back, a pair of fiery wings burst forth, shining brilliantly. Is this how you use it? Leo calmly asked. Meanwhile, the swordswoman, Julia, witnessed this and was so surprised that she dropped all her belongings. No way. It took me 3 weeks to get a feel for this secret technique. Leo, who are you really? She wondered to herself, dumbfounded. It was understandable, though. After all, Leo was a legendary hero, with the experience to easily master any technique. Without much practice, time quickly passed. The scene changed to a dock. Although a bit surprising, it seemed to be a modern ship, powered by an engine. At this moment, the incoming freshmen were also present, preparing to depart. Gazing at the massive ship before them, the group couldn't help but gawk in amazement. Whoa, it's huge! Murmurs of astonishment filled the air. Then a professor approached and addressed the group. Greetings, new students. I am Professor Aina Eilanier, in charge of the freshman night class. We will be departing for Lumen shortly. Everyone, please board the ship. As he spoke, he gestured towards the ship behind him. With that, the freshmen excitedly hurried onto the ship. Awaiting them was a decadent dessert feast, prepared for the students to enjoy. While everyone is enjoying themselves, eating and drinking, a voice suddenly calls out, directed towards Leo and Celia. Hey, you two lovebirds. Got a minute to spare? My name is Catahomas. I'm from the Mora Kingdom. From medicine to weapons, I sell everything. Come see me if you need anything while you're at the academy. With those words, he hands them each one of his business cards. Turns out Catahomas is an alchemist. That's why he has such a wide variety of goods. Meanwhile, Julia is still fuming about being called a couple. So, Leo answers for them both. It's a pleasure to meet you. I'm Leo Blog from the Direct Kingdom. Hearing this, Kay's eyes couldn't help but flash with surprise. Wow, you passed the Western Regional exam in such a short time. Impressive. But setting that aside, Leo looked around, observing, and felt something was off. Anyway, is it just me, or is this situation a bit strange? Everything's too peaceful. It feels like something's not right. In response to his words, the swordswoman, Julia, sighed and countered, a warm welcome. 4 new students who passed the exam. Isn't that normal? Hearing that, Kay nodded in agreement while eating cake. There's no reason for them to be rough with students before enrollment. Definitely, he said with a confident voice. But who knows? Maybe his morning breath was just too strong, because right after he finished speaking, the entire ship suddenly started shaking violently, a sign that something bad was about to happen. Then, from the depths of the sea, a giant tentacle emerged and slammed into the ship, causing large cracks to appear on the deck. Panic screams began to fill the air. Professor Aina, help! Cried someone from another corner. Professor Aina, witnessing the students' panic, Professor Aina calmly sipped his wine, as if nothing was happening. Help you, he asked. You are all students of the Lumen Academy. Hero candidates. When danger arises, you must overcome it yourselves. As he spoke, he glanced towards the front, where a gigantic octopus, with a mouth full of sharp teeth, had just emerged from the sea. the situation suddenly took an unexpected turn, enraging the swordswoman Syria, who crushed the cake in her hand. Seeing this, Leo sliced off one of the tentacles with his sword and quickly tried to calm Syria down. Stay calm. In response, the swordswoman told Leo that he should worry about himself. As she spoke, she launched an attack with her sword, engulfed in a radiant aura. But right after that, for some reason, the giant octopus opened its mouth and shot out a huge jet of water. It was aimed directly at Julia, soaking her from head to toe. Seeing that, Leo didn't know what to say. It's the natural behavior of a kraken. It reacts to heat by spraying water. It's basic knowledge, he said, exasperated. Julia glared at him even more fiercely. Meanwhile, an unnamed student was caught by the giant octopus's tentacle wrapped tightly around his leg. He was about to become lunch. That damn octopus! Leo cursed and rushed to the rescue. Then the two of them, each of them unleashed a single attack, easily slicing the tentacle in half. At the same moment, Kay, hiding under the table, witnessed their powerful teamwork. Their combined attack was so strong, he could hardly believe his eyes. This was the power of Ciola, the highest scorer in the Western region. But who was this Leo guy? He wondered with a stunned expression. Before he could say anything else, a frozen tentacle came flying straight at him. He barely dodged the icy projectile. Watch out, he yelled angrily at the person who had just frozen the tentacle. Leo turned to look. It was the girl he had bumped into earlier. Watching her control her ice magic to attack, its power is nothing to scoff at. Responding to Kay's words, she complained, "Why don't you stay back? If you can't protect yourself." Hearing her words, he could only lament his own weakness. Gosh, strong people never care if we get caught in their fights. He finished speaking, and then, as if cursed by incredibly bad luck, another giant tentacle was flung towards him. It was like he'd become a magnet for severed tentacles. And this time, the attackers were the two brothers, iPad and Chelsea. The competition isn't over yet. Syria Dinger, the iPad guy, reminds everyone. We feel the same way. Julia retorts, clearly frustrated. While the students are struggling against the monster, Professor Ein is enjoying himself, savoring a glass of wine he just poured. He murmurs to himself, "There are many monsters in the lake leading to Lumen Academy. A kraken, perfect for a welcoming party." The young professor's eyes narrow slightly as he observes the prominent individuals. As expected, the team leaders are standing out. Chelsea of the East, Celia Ginger, and I Padley Welling of the West, Chloe Miller of the North, and Golden Thailand of the South. Central Committee's Duran. This year's freshmen are truly exceptional. But the one who impressed me the most is that unknown freshman. His swordsmanship is incredibly efficient, not a single wasted movement. He moves as if he can predict the dragon's actions. I'll see him in the night class. Thinking about this, Einar smiled with anticipation. And so, with the combined efforts of these exceptional individuals, even a dragon couldn't withstand the onslaught of their attacks. It suffered 7 defeats. Not long after, the ship carrying them to Lumen Academy docked. As soon as they disembarked, the whole group was throwing up, their faces pale. And then, imagine having used up all your medicine. Kay muttered something. Following him, Professor Aina gracefully jumped from the ship's bow. She told everyone, "You'll be crossing that lake many times, so get used to it quickly. Now, let's head to the entrance hall." The scene changed to inside Lumen Academy. At the Electra training ground, the new students were gathered there. From all 4 sides, several people were observing the newcomers, as if searching for exceptional individuals. Among them, "See? I told you. No one here is ordinary. I hope we have some interesting students this year." Murmurs and whispers filled the air. Ignoring the chatter, Professor Aina announced, "We will begin the entrance ceremony now. Line up by district. Those with high scores, stand at the front of each line. The headmaster will say a few words first." Following the instructions, the students quickly formed neat lines. Once everyone was in place, Old Man Kalian stepped forward to speak. "You all came here with hopes of becoming heroes. I have just a few words for you. If you dream of becoming a hero, always prioritize yourself and push beyond your limits. Those who cannot do that do not belong here." Maybe he was a little too excited, but he suddenly raised his hand and smashed the podium in front of him. It shattered into pieces. his rather violent action silenced the students below. No one dared to say a word. Not even a single clap was heard. Turning back to face the students, he realized that his speech hadn't received any reaction. The old man felt a bit embarrassed. Did I say too much? He wondered. Hearing that, the students snapped back to attention and erupted in cheers. They yelled and screamed, making the old man's face light up. However, it seemed like the cheers weren't loud enough. So the principal casually remarked, "I can't hear anything." Hearing this, the professors standing behind him were stunned. They were speechless. The longer they taught at Lumen, the more the grand image of the architect crumbled. Ignoring the principal's humorous personality, the MC continued speaking. "Now, we'll have a speech from the freshman representative. The freshman representative is Leo Block. Please come up to the stage." Leo was surprised to be chosen as the representative. He immediately looked at Professor Andy. Catching his eye, the handsome professor simply smiled and gave a slight nod. Leo had no choice but to go up and give his speech. Fortunately, they had prepared something for him in advance. What needs to be said to the professors and fellow students? We, the incoming freshmen, will enter Lumen as proud members of this academy. Blah blah, thank you. This was the freshman representative speech. Leo just spoke. Leo closed his book, but the host didn't let him leave the stage yet. Instead, he turned and asked, "Thank you, Leo. Now tell us, what is your goal as the freshman representative?" Standing beside him, Leo immediately understood the school's intentions. They wanted to provoke those who almost took his place. Thinking about this, he wasn't afraid of anyone and challenged all the factory farm chickens, meaning weaklings. "Hello, I'm the freshman representative Leo. If anyone wants this position, come and take it. I don't care who you are," Leo declared with overflowing confidence. Unlike the teacher standing behind him, who just 3 seconds ago thought he was a model student, obedient and well-behaved, they thought this year's entrance ceremony would be peaceful. Time quickly passed until late afternoon. The scene shifts to the Lumen Academy dormitory. The group of freshmen were guided to their rooms. "You've all worked hard today. Starting tomorrow, for about a week, exploratory classes will begin. During this time, regardless of your desired major, you can attend any class you wish. During this process, you will choose 3 subjects to specialize in. That's all for now. Get some sleep so you're not late for your first class tomorrow." Back to Leo's perspective. Before entering his room, his friend Kay bids him farewell. "Leo, our rooms are next to each other. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. Good night, Leo. See you tomorrow." Leo nods in response. As soon as he steps inside, he throws his suitcase on the bed and lies down. He doesn't even bother changing his clothes. But of course, Leo isn't that careless. He lies down because he has something to check. After closing his eyes, Leo's consciousness was transported to a vast space. It looked like a gigantic library, with countless books arranged everywhere. "I hope Lumen can help me find something here, something that will awaken my heroic spirit," Leo thought to himself. Time quickly passed until the next morning. The scene changed to the dining hall. While Leo was eating alone, his friend, Kay, arrived with a tray piled 3 times higher than a normal person's. He sat next to Leo and asked, "Mind if I join you?" Seeing this, Leo didn't mind and agreed. "Sure," he said. But as soon as he spoke, trouble found him. At that moment, another tray of food was placed in front of Leo. Along with it came a shout from the freshman representative. "What you said in your speech yesterday, did you really mean it?" The owner of these words was one of the notable individuals favored by Professor A. Introducing Duran Moira from the Central District. His meal was pretty normal, except for the tiny flag stuck on top of his hamburger, like something a playful child would do. Otherwise, everything was fine. On the opposite side, Leo continued eating, as if oblivious to Duran's annoyance. "Seems like my words yesterday were quite provocative, weren't they?" "Well, they were. If a stranger came and acted like that, it wouldn't be surprising to react this way," Leo calmly replied. But the calmer he was, the more infuriated Duran became. Seeing Leo seemingly ignoring him, Duran's eyes widened in anger. "As a reminder, don't you know who I am? I'm the captain of the Central District." On the other side, the 2 starving devils continued to ignore him, happily enjoying their meal. Duran felt like a clown, desperately trying to get attention, and being completely ignored. Finally, unable to contain his rage any longer, a surge of electricity coursed through him. he kicked out, sending his own food tray flying. Along with it, Leo's food was also flung into the air. But this wasn't enough to faze our main character. With incredible dexterity, his arms moved like a machine, catching all the flying food onto his plate. Not a single morsel was missed. He even managed to help the guy next to him, saving his food from falling. But that's not all. Leo then stuffed some of the caught food into the hamburger in front of him, creating a burger with the finest ingredients. The double cheeseburger king discarded. Such a precious meal wasted. Unforgivable. Leo chuckled softly. Across from him, Duran, seeing his provocation had no effect, completely lost his cool. He was now in full-on rage mode. I'll pull you down from this pedestal right now. I can't stand it. Seeing someone weaker than me, acting so arrogant, he declared through gritted teeth. However, before they could tear into each other, a large hand landed on both their shoulders, stopping them. The newcomer was Professor Ian. Regarding their disruptive behavior, he said coldly, "Let's see. We'll see. One of you is the captain of the Central Region, and the other is the freshman representative. Arguing on your first day at Lumen, perhaps you're both ready for what's coming." The professor's voice held a dangerous undertone, making both hotheads gulp. Nervously, time quickly passed. The scene shifts to the night exploration class. Eager students, interested in the subject, have been waiting for a while. However, Professor Ian hasn't explained anything or mentioned a single thing. This confuses a brown-haired student, prompting him to raise his hand. "Excuse me, Professor, but class is about to start." Nearby, the swordswoman Julia wonders why Leo isn't here yet. As if to answer their questions, Leo and Euron stumble into the classroom. Crawling inside, they look like they just ran 10 laps around the school. Seeing Leo covered in sweat, Julia rushes over to him. "What happened? Were you fighting?" To this question, Leo didn't offer much of an explanation, just a quick glance at Duran, a hint of amusement in his eyes. After waiting for everyone to arrive, the young professor officially started the class. "All right, everyone's here. Let's begin. Welcome, new students. My name is Ein Mylania. I'll be your instructor for first-year nights." Up front, the blonde guy still seemed bitter about his encounter with Leo. Even during the lecture, he kept shooting Leo glares, his eyes practically sparking with lightning. This gave Kai a feeling that something interesting was about to happen in this class. "Whoa, hold on. What's this?" They've already started a full-blown mental showdown. "Huh." He calmly turned back towards the professor. He completely ignored the classroom squabble and continued explaining the lesson. The 3 powers derived from mana are magical energy, spiritual energy, and aura. Of these, aura is the most difficult to control. Does anyone know why? In the back, the swordswoman, Syria, quickly answered. Because aura disrupts the flexibility of mana during the conversion process. Hearing this, Professor Ein gave her a praising look and nodded before continuing. Correct. While magical energy and spiritual energy utilize mana in its ethereal state, aura absorbs mana and processes it to suit the body. Can anyone explain how we use the energy accumulated in our bodies? As he spoke, his body began emitting an aura. And to this question, even Julia wasn't entirely sure of the answer. Shouldn't it just require a little bit of force? She wondered silently. Finally, seeing no one step forward, Leo answered for the group. Because we use the power of our energy by burning mana. Professor Ein's face showed a hint of surprise as he nodded. Correct. So then, do you all know the most important thing when burning mana? It's stamina. Leo explained, turning back to Ein. Seeing Leo answer his questions correctly, one after another, his expression slowly began to change. Impressive. Leo, have you ever studied about ki? Leo shook his head. This made the professor's evaluation of him rise even higher. Someone who hasn't properly studied ki could grasp its essence so well. Thinking about this, he smiled slightly and continued. Let's put theory aside for a moment. Why don't we try moving our bodies a bit? As he spoke, he began to focus energy into the soles of his feet. Then, to the astonishment of all the students, the professor's feet stepped onto the air as if it were solid ground. This is the aura step. The basic principle is to focus your aura's power into your feet, and its potential applications are limitless. Time quickly passed, and the students started forming groups to try and practice this mystical skill. However, it's not an easy skill to master. That's why most of them haven't truly grasped it yet, except for this swordswoman, Julia. Living up to her genius reputation, she's learned the skill relatively well, and starts showing off to our protagonist. Hey, I'll show you how if you call me Big Sis. Up ahead, Leo, faced with this kindergarten-level principal, felt a bit embarrassed. Learning from Syria isn't necessary. The principles of aura manipulation aren't that different. He casually mentions Professor Ein again. Just now, he also noticed Duran's gaze. He kept looking intently in one direction. Then a smile spread across his face, like he just thought of something interesting. He claps his hands to get everyone's attention. All right, everyone. As you know, hearing this, a slight commotion arises. Chelsea, the mage, confused about the situation, curiously asks, "What are you talking about, Professor?" Back to Professor Ein. He calls for Leo and Duran to come forward and turns to them to ask something. This blonde-haired kid, Moira, what's got you so riled up? I'm not riled up, he replied, but he couldn't even meet the professor's gaze. Seeing this, Ahin didn't really need to ask to figure out the reason, so he gave them a chance to settle it. All right, let's take it to the field. The Central Region Captain, Moira, and the freshman representative, Rio Block, will have a one-on-one race to decide who will represent the class. In this match, you may use your aura without any restrictions. The professor's words made the blonde-haired boy flinch. Next up, our merchant friend here is taking his advertising board to hustle bets from everyone. Place your bets, everyone. The genius of the Moira clan, a descendant of the Duran Moira heroes, has arrived. An electrifying presence and a dark horse from the countryside, and a mysterious figure who subdued the captains of every district and became the freshman representative. Leo and Blog are in a different corner. The other students are looking at them too. They're gossiping. I mean, he's the freshman representative, so he has to show something, right? Right? From what I saw when he talked to Celia Dinger, it seems like he can't even use footwork. Presence, am I right? And did you hear what he did yesterday? I can't stand this guy. Becoming the captain of the Central District. Not everyone can do that. On the contrary, this freshman representative hasn't proven anything. Murmurs of doubt began to fill the air. Ignoring the whispers, Professor Ayan saw they were ready and announced, "All right, first one to the finish line wins. Whoever wins, you must accept the outcome gracefully. That's what we call sportsmanship. Get ready." Meanwhile, swordswoman Julia, although logic told her that Leo couldn't possibly win, for some reason, her intuition was telling her otherwise. Honestly, Leo can't win, she thought. But that guy, he always exceeds expectations. Come on, ai. A shout echoed, and immediately after, it was both of them, Leo and Euron, running forward with all their might. Unsurprisingly, Euron, with his superior aura control, took the lead. "I'll go first, newbie," he taunted and shot off like a rocket. Everyone was impressed by his speed. Gasps of "whoa," as expected of Euron. So cool. But the freshman representative, they said, turning to look at Leo and shaking their heads. Unbelievable. He's so bad. Just as I thought. That guy being the representative is a joke. Unacceptable. Beside the mage, Chelsea, seeing Leo being ignored, she yells out her encouragement. "Leo, come on. Get back in the race." With lightning speed, that Duran guy has already covered half the distance. Looking at the current standings, Kay can't help but worry. For his new friend, Duran's already halfway there. Now, back to Leo. He's obviously aware of this too. So, as he approaches a bend, out of nowhere, Leo slams on the brakes. Then, he pushes off the ground with all his might, launching himself off the track. Julia stares in disbelief, wondering what on earth Leo is doing. Following his trajectory, they watch as he leaps and bounds, heading straight for the observation deck. Then he paused, observing. He saw Duran's silhouette running ahead. He channeled all his strength into his legs and launched himself forward with explosive speed. His jump was so powerful that it cracked the ground into countless pieces. His body shot forward, faster than a rocket. As he zoomed past Duran, he didn't forget to taunt him. "See you later, slowpoke." Duran was still trying to figure out what happened when Leo had already crossed the finish line. And it wasn't just the blonde guy. All the students who had mocked Leo earlier were dumbfounded, utterly speechless. This is no joke. Did you see that? Euron was supposed to be the fastest in our class, but he lost to that guy? Unbelievable. I'm sure he's never even learned the aura step. The group exchanged bewildered glances after seeing Leo's sudden burst of speed. Meanwhile, the swordswoman, Julia, unlike the others, recognized the technique Leo just used. It wasn't the aura step. It was the phoenix step one-cornered. The clueless duo, Chelsea and Kai, weren't overthinking it. They were just happy that Leo won. They cheered for him. As for Professor Ein, with his experience, he's the one who's seen the most. Euron used his signature move, Lightning Field, to boost his speed. I expected that, but that speed is incredible. Meanwhile, although Leo is climbing slower, he has better control. He's focusing all his flame aura into his legs and creating remarkably powerful steps. That's an excellent application for the current generation. Perhaps a true hero will finally emerge, he said with an expectant smile. Meanwhile, Leo, after securing his victory, approached his opponent. Good match, Euron. If it were a longer race, the outcome might have been different, he said, extending his hand. It's a shame that Duran is so annoying. It's hard to put on a friendly face for Leo. Just watch. The defeat of arrogance. He says something and shoves Leo aside, ignoring Duran's rude remarks. The mage Chelsea runs towards Leo, with eyes full of admiration. Leo, you're so amazing. I want to train with you too. Looking at her expression, this guy, Kay, seems clueless about how attractive he is. He turns to Syria and asks, but why is she so infatuated with him? And not me? Shouldn't she pay attention to me too? Well, of course, Syria says, looking at him like he's an idiot. Anyway, class is over now. Let's all go to the cafe. Drinks are on me today. A cheerful voice suggested. It seemed like he had made a killing from the earlier bet, but Leo politely declined the offer. Sorry, but you guys go ahead. Where are you going? Don't you want to know? I'm going to a summoning lecture, Kay asked curiously. To a summoning lecture, the protagonist frankly shared. Hearing this, the orange-haired guy, seeing a night class student going to a summoning lecture, was completely baffled. Why would a swordsman student attend a summoning class? In response, Syria could only sigh in exasperation. I have no idea what he's thinking. Back to Leo, on his way to summoning class. He was lost in thought. Something was bothering him. There was one thing he couldn't understand. Why did the Fairy King grant him an oath as a reward? A reward from the hero's world is related to the power of that world's master. The reward he received was related to summoning. But Teacher Andy is a pure mage. He has nothing to do with summoning. Normally, he would receive a skill related to magic. Moreover, to make a contract with a fairy spirit, he has to go to the land of the fairy spirits. Right now it's useless, Leo muttered to himself, before being startled by a girl's voice. So you also came to hear about love summoning, huh? Hearing this, our protagonist turned around and saw that the person calling him was the captain of the East Division, Chelsea. The 17-year-old Leo was surprised she noticed him. Chelsea nodded in greeting. It's nice to meet you, Leo, she said. Leo smiled back and replied, it's a pleasure to meet you too, Chelsea. You can just call me sir. She waved her hand dismissively and said, then turned to him with a curious look, wondering why he was there. I was sure you were a student in the swordsman department, Leo. I didn't expect you to be interested in summoning. Well, I've been interested in parapsychology lately, Leo explained vaguely. Then I guess we'll be seeing each other often, Chelsea said softly. Leo then asked her if she could tell him which spirit she had made a contract with. In response to these words, Chelsea didn't hesitate and immediately summoned her spirit to show him. It seemed to be a water spirit. Next, Chelsea asked Leo, can you show me your spirit too? I haven't formed a contract yet, the main character explained, causing Chelsea to be a little surprised. Really? If you need help in the future, just ask me. I can give you some advice on summoning spirits. Oh, okay. I'll remember that. But how old are you? Leo asked curiously. I'm 17. Leo, you're 15, right? I heard you talking to Julia. Back to Leo. Hearing the age of the girl in front of him, he exclaimed internally. At 17, she looks much younger. She even looks younger than Chelsea. Thinking about Taeju, he noticed Chelsea staring at him suspiciously. Then, as if a woman's intuition was kicking in, Chelsea asked suspiciously, you were just thinking something rude, weren't you? No, Leo said, glancing away. Let's forget about that. Then, she gave a slight smile and suggested, "But anyway, Leo, I was really impressed with your match. Someday, please accept my challenge." In response to this, our protagonist never backs down from a challenge. So, of course, he accepted with a smile. Scene change, the summoning class. After arriving, Leo was a bit surprised by the small size of the class. "Are there only this many people?" he asked. Chelsea replied with an embarrassed expression. "Well, summoning isn't exactly a popular choice, and this is just a trial class anyway. But it is surprising that the class is being held here." The main character exclaimed, "A lesson in a meadow?" Suddenly, a huge shadow appeared above them. The group panicked. "A black dragon! Where did that come from? Get away!" A student screamed in terror as he saw the dragon staring at him. Seeing their frightened faces, a woman's voice rang out to explain, "It's doing that because it likes you, kiddo. It's a pleasure to meet you, freshman. My name is Marin. I'm your summoning instructor, and I'll be guiding you this school year." The male students, looking at the beautiful face and vibrant figure of their professor, felt their hearts skip a beat. "I want to be her familiar too." They all wished they could say it out loud. These guys were smitten. Even Leo had to acknowledge her beauty. If Winnow were here, he'd lose his mind. Leo muttered to himself, thinking of Winnow's womanizing tendencies in their past life. Back to Professor Yura. After letting the group settle down a bit, she began to speak, starting the lesson. "All right, recruits, your presence here indicates you possess some talent in summoning. Correct?" "Yes," the group shouted in unison, much to her satisfaction. "Good." A loud and clear answer. "We'll proceed to the practical training area." With that, Yura turned to her assistant. Carlo, a young man with white hair and glasses, was leading a griffin. It was there to assist everyone. He was the teaching assistant for the first-year summoning class. Seeing the transportation had arrived, Yura continued, "You'll be going in pairs. Now mount your griffins." Hearing her say that, one student hesitantly voiced his concern. "Professor, this is my first time riding a griffin." He spoke with pleading eyes, hoping for help, but his plea was completely ignored. All he received in return was a furious glare from Yura. "So you're telling me that you refuse to listen to my lesson? If you think you can't do it, then go back." With that, she swiftly mounted her black dragon and immediately took off, leaving the dumbfounded students below, completely clueless. Finally, it's teaching assistant Callow who steps up and advises everyone. "Come on, everyone. Let's follow the professor." Next, riding these griffins is easier than the students thought. And surprisingly, Chelsea Dudonda approaches Leo and asks to pair up with him. "Leo, can I hold onto the griffin's reins with you?" Though a look of surprise flashes across Leo's face, he agrees, telling her to hold on as long as she likes. And so, after a brief familiarization, the group quickly catches up to the professor, and only when they feel the cool ocean breeze against their faces do they realize how exhilarating it is to have a flying mount. They can't believe they're actually riding griffins. "This is the Lumen class, all right. Switch places with me. I want to try flying too. Just wait a little longer." Sounds of arguing began to fill the air. Meanwhile, Chelsea couldn't contain her excitement. "I was a little worried, but it's gentler than I thought." Hearing that, Leo, who was behind her, added a word of caution. "Still be careful. A griffin is a summoned creature. They're hard to control, especially for beginners." Hearing this, Chelsea couldn't hide her curiosity. "Huh? But it seems so tame." "That's because," Leo started to explain, but before he could finish, Professor Yura, who was in front, suddenly took out a whistle and blew into it. Its resonance was so powerful that it made everyone feel uneasy. And as soon as they heard this sound, the Lycenes' attitudes suddenly did a complete 180. They became more ferocious and uncontrollable than ever before. "This is bad. They're not listening anymore. Why is this happening all of a sudden? Professor, save us!" The panicked group cried out for help. But IRU had no intention of lifting a finger. Instead, she told these newbie students to handle the problem themselves. "Do you think you deserve to be students of Lumen Academy? If you can't even control a graphy, figure out how to control them yourselves." As for Leo and Chelsea, their mount's sudden rebellion left the black-haired girl utterly bewildered. Seeing this, Leo from behind gently wrapped his arms around her waist and took her hand. He calmly guided the griffin, which had a very high spirit level. If they used force to subdue it, It would only make it more rebellious. Leo, what are you doing? Chelsea asked, her face as red as a ripe tomato. However, Leo paid no attention to this. Instead, he gently took the reins and softly said, let's regain control of this griffin. As he spoke, the griffin immediately calmed down and dashed forward. His mount control skills were so impressive that even Yura couldn't help but let out a compliment. See? Not bad at all, just like I said. She then turned to her assistant and asked, Carlo, the first-year representative student, is he a candidate for the engineering department? Is that right? Hearing this, Carlo quickly double-checked the document and nodded. So, does that mean he has his own griffin at home? How else could he ride so well? She continued to ask. Carlo immediately shook his head in response. No, he doesn't come from a noble family. No noble family owns a griffin. Turning towards Yura, she felt like she had just won the lottery. It seems like we've just found a real gem, Yura said, stroking her chin thoughtfully. Scene change. Summoning Island. This is the summoning department's training grounds. At this moment, most of the students were sprawled out on the sand, feeling seasick after riding those rep fins here, while everyone was still recovering from the motion sickness. Leo took the opportunity to wander around, looking for anything interesting. Then, he noticed a strange fruit nearby and reached out to pluck it. Or rather, what caught his attention was a feather stuck to the fruit. A feather? Leo muttered to himself, noticing the unusual expression on his face. Chelsea asked, What's wrong, Leo? Oh, it's nothing. Leo shook his head, dismissing her concern. Meanwhile, Yura, without giving his students a moment to rest, he bellows, Stop dawdling and pay attention. You'll now be taking a practical exam. A practical exam? The students exclaimed in shock. The group's jaws dropped as they groaned in protest. What? A practical exam on the very first day? But this is just orientation. Why do we have to take a test already? A student with a center-parted hairstyle asked, bewildered. To answer their questions, Yura began to explain. Compared to the other two disciplines, our path is much more demanding. Does anyone here not know that? For summoners, simply controlling mana isn't enough. To form contracts with spirits, you need to have affinity with them and control objects. Summoning requires taming abilities. That's why there are fewer heroes in the summoning department than in other departments. However, compared to other heroes, summoners who reach the peak achieve greater feats. Didn't you all come here to become that kind of hero? In response to these words, a white-haired girl stepped forward and affirmed, yes. So, what's the test? This girl's name is Eliza Hudson. She hails from a prestigious summoning hero family in the north. The Hudson family? Professor Yura glanced at her for a moment and explained, this island is called Summoning Island. Just as the name suggests, it's teeming with summoned creatures, since summoning is a weapon for summoners. So, this test will evaluate your taming abilities. The test is simple. Tame a summoned creature in this forest and bring it back. Once you've tamed it and signed a contract, it will belong to you, she said with a bright smile. The students, realizing they could get their own minion on this island, were practically going crazy with excitement. Whoa, this is Lumen Academy, all right. The whole group quickly dispersed into the forest to find the perfect pet, and as they climbed, they prepared to move on. As he searched for a suitable familiar, Elisa suddenly spoke to him. So, you're the freshman representative, aren't you? The rumors about you defeating Uran are already spread. I wonder what I can expect from you in summoning class. I'm just trying my best, he replied curtly, walking past her. Behind him, Elisa stared at his back, her brows furrowed, as if slightly annoyed. Meanwhile, Professor Yura, after observing the students, chuckled to herself. She had a feeling that these students would become key players in their freshman year. Time quickly passed, and some students began to get acquainted and successfully tamed their summoned beast. Meanwhile, Leo is still wandering around without a suitable target. He succeeded in taming one. Wow, that's the freshman representative. But he's going too deep into the forest, isn't he? Someone spoke up. Another person next to him shrugged dismissively. Whatever. If he fails 7 times at taming and gets 0 points, he'll definitely come crawling back to the night department. He thinks summoning is that easy? Paying no mind to the gossip, Leo continued deeper into the forest until he was sure that no one else was around. Leo took out the feather he had found. When he first arrived on the island, he began to use his fire aura to burn it. Huh, just as I thought, Leo chuckled. But his laughter didn't even last a second before a loud explosion erupted behind him. Meanwhile, at a campsite somewhere else, Mrs. Jenna was worried about her. So, will Leo be all right? She murmured. Just then, someone approached with a plate of food and shook their head. Jenna, it's only his first few days of school. You're already this worried? Well, I'm sure nothing bad will happen, right? Jenna nodded and accepted a glass of water from the other person. But she had no idea that her son was indeed in trouble. Big trouble. This intense heat, one of the 3 greatest summoning beasts, the phoenix, Leo said with a dumbfounded expression. In front of Leo, a voice began to echo. Zinga's child simply replied to the voice. Leo's eyes filled with curiosity as he asked, "Do you know my mother?" Seeing this, the other party's voice softened. A bit. Your mother? Then I wasn't wrong. Indeed, if she had a child, they would be around your age. Do I know your mother? Of course I do. I owe Jenna a great debt. The owner of the voice was a phoenix, bathing in flames. Her name is Purina, one of the 3 legendary sacred beasts. At that moment, she looked at Leo with affectionate eyes and introduced herself. My name is Farina, son of Jenna, across from you. Leo returned the greeting. Hello, Phoenix Farina. My name is Leo Blog. What is your relationship with my mother? You said you were indebted to her. A look of remembrance flickered in Farina's eyes. He slowly began to recount the story. Jenna saved the life of my summoner, Ellen Luna. Ellen was exploring a dungeon in Saren at the time. She had lost all her comrades and was in grave danger. Then your mother arrived and saved her. In doing so, Jenna lost her blazing aura. If not for that incident, Jenna would surely have achieved the rank of hero. Back to Leo's perspective. After hearing the story, he felt a pang of sadness for his mother. But then he affirmed, my mother said she doesn't regret what she did that day. That's right. She was a knight like that. Felina agreed with a smile. Then Leo asked, why are you on this island, Felina? However, the Phoenix woman didn't reveal the reason, only saying that she couldn't tell him. Next, she turned the conversation back to Leo. But aren't you a knight? What are you doing on this island? Leo said he was taking a summoning class. This surprised Felina. Thinking this to herself, she chuckled. Ah, how interesting. This is fate, Leo Borg. Finally, I can repay the debt of gratitude I owe your mother. Here, Leo, take this. This is my son. Someday, when you become a great summoner, I hope you will form a contract with him. Truly, it's a shame for the summoner who was supposed to receive him. As she spoke, she handed Leo an egg that radiated a brilliant golden light. Back to our main character. After hearing this, he asked me, can it be done now? Up ahead, Farina's face went blank with shock. For a moment. Then, she urgently tried to stop Leo. It's too soon. You could lose your life. Stop. No, it's not too late. Gone was the defiant readiness, the unwavering challenge in his eyes. It reminds me of Rena. I wish you luck. Come back to us, Leo. At that moment, his consciousness was transported into a dark space. Before him, a small flame flickered, radiating a warm glow. Leo reached out and gently touched the flame. The instant his fingers brushed against it, the flame erupted fiercely and engulfs him. Inside this fiery vortex, the heat is unbearable. This is the Phoenix's flame. To create a powerful flame by burning the body, we must endure this pain every single day. Living beings, by regenerating their burning flesh, will forever understand the pain of others and share their suffering. Leo whispers these words. As if sensing his thoughts, the flames gradually diminish and become much calmer. Meanwhile, outside, cracks begin to appear on the egg surface. It then leaves Leo's hand and slowly floats in the air. All the flames surrounding Leo are drawn into the egg. Did you succeed? Farina asked. I did. Leo replied with a smile. Farina was happy for him. You're against Leo Borg. You'll become the greatest summoner in the world. Congratulations on successfully forming the contract. This little one's name is Fiora. I entrust my child to you, Farina said with a smile. Such touching motherly love brings tears to my eyes. A child is born, yet to feel its mother's warmth for even 3 seconds before being given away. Across from her, Leo looked at the Phoenix chick with a hint of doubt. Is this really a phoenix? It looks more like a baby chicken, he wondered to himself. And then, the little chick chirped twice, looking at him with curious eyes. This only confirmed Leo's suspicion that it was indeed a chick. The scene shifts to Professor Yura. By now, the students had found their suitable symbiotes and returned to report to her. After glancing over the students, the professor turned to her assistant and asked, "Karo, what time is it?" Hearing this, the assistant immediately understood and replied, 5 more minutes. Only 4 people left. As soon as he finished speaking, heavy footsteps echoed from the distance. Catching the professor's attention, a black bear was charging towards them. With its colossal size, it's Chelsea's summoned beast. "Professor, are you not finished yet?" she asks, looking a bit disheveled. It seems like taming this bear was quite a struggle for her. However, the result is quite impressive. Even Professor Yura praises her. "You tamed a water bear as a trainee knight? Impressive." At the same time, the big guy, Gold, is clinging to the leg of a giant bird. As it lands, is that the shadow ball? That's a spirit beast that even renowned summoner families have difficulty taming. Yura praises him. "But you haven't formed a contract yet." Professor Wondren's explanation is more than sufficient. It's actually quite thorough. The female professor waved her hand dismissively. Next, Elisa returned, riding atop a gigantic white serpent. She made her way back to the gathering point, drawing gasps of awe and admiration from everyone around. "I've already made a contract with it, because my family doesn't have one of these yet," the young girl said nonchalantly. Meanwhile, Yura recognized the summoned creature and couldn't help but praise it. "Is that a Goggin serpent? Magnificent to have that by your side." Assistant Kahlo spoke up, reminding the professor, "Time's up, Professor," just as the last student arrives. Hearing this, everyone turned their heads in unison, and they saw Duio slowly emerges from the forest. What's even more peculiar is the small chicken on his head. Seeing this, the other students can't help but burst into laughter. "Ah, what's that? Did he tame a chicken? What a loser. He must have given up." After realizing he couldn't summon anything, unlike the other students, Professor Yura immediately senses the aura emanating from the small chicken, and her eyes widen in shock. "Damn it, that's a phoenix." Time quickly passes. The scene changes to Professor Yura's office. Duio is called in for a private meeting. Outside the door, after straightening his clothes, Leo lightly knocked on the door. Inside the room, Yura, knowing he had arrived, spoke up. "Gumin, I heard you were looking for me." A curious Leo asked, "Have a seat." "Do you know? Honestly, this is the first time I've ever seen a phoenix. Actually, I didn't even know phoenixes existed on Summoning Island. And a freshman forming a contract with a phoenix? This is unprecedented in the Academy's history." "I know who you really are, Leo," she said, looking directly into his eyes with a serious expression. Leo gulped nervously, worried his identity would be exposed, even though he hadn't done anything wrong. However, the fact that a hero could be reincarnated after 5,000 years was bound to attract attention. But Leo was overthinking things, because right after that, Professor Yura embraced Leo and showered him with praise. "You're a genius summoner, a once-in-a-lifetime talent. I want to commend your achievements, but I think the fact that you formed a contract with a phoenix should be kept secret. Revealing it now would cause unnecessary commotion. There's no need. When the trial classes end, make sure to choose summoning as your major. You have the potential to become a legendary summoning hero, remembered for ages to come," she said, and gave Leo a reassuring pat on the back. Time quickly passed until the next day. Chloe, the ice mage, was yawning as she walked down the hallway when she was stopped by 2 people. Leo and Kay grabbed her. "Your mouth is about to rip open, Chloe. Huh, you look tired." Hearing that, Chloe turned around and explained that she stayed up late reading magic books. Leo suddenly remembered her student ID and said, "You're Chloe Miller, right?" As he spoke, Leo returned her ID card. Looking at the card, Chloe suddenly remembered that she had met Leo before. "Oh, it's you." "Thank you, freshman representative." The 3 of them then happily walked into the classroom together. Today was the trial magic class. "Like this, Leo? Looks like you'll be joining the magic class too, huh?" Kay asked curiously. "Since we're still in the trial period, I want to participate in as many classes as possible," Leo calmly replied, making Kay envious. Jealous of his studiousness, Kay exclaimed, "That's amazing. I'm only interested in magic, so I'm only joining the magic class." Suddenly, Kay lowered his voice and whispered in the protagonist's ear, "That ice queen over there, she's aiming for the top of the magic department. Her name is Chloe Miller." As he spoke, he glanced towards the ice queen. He realized she was looking back at him. A chill ran down his spine. And he quickly tried to escape. "It's freezing here, isn't it? I think I'll move to the back," he said cheerfully, turning around. However, before he could even take a step, a sharp ice pillar shot up from the ground, blocking his path. The person responsible was, of course, Lewis. "Kay, come with me to the front. It seems you're interested in the lesson, so I'll help you pay attention." She grabbed Kay by the collar and dragged him along, like a small dog. Poor Kay could only whimper in silence. Leo, witnessing this scene, found it rather amusing. Meanwhile, the mage siblings, iPad and Chelsea, from the back row, also greeted Leo. A few minutes later, the magic instructor walked through the door. His appearance sent the female students into a frenzy. "Oh my God, he's so handsome," they whispered amongst themselves, ignoring their murmurs. The handsome instructor spoke in a clear voice. "I will be your magic instructor for this year. My name is Landuz." He paused, lightly tapping a stack of papers beside him. "And a reminder, before we begin today's practical session, you will all take a written magic theory test." He finished. With a simple snap of his fingers, the handsome teacher sent all the test papers flying towards everyone. "A test already? But we haven't learned anything yet." "A test? It's messing with our minds. What in the world is this? A test on the very first day of the trial class?" someone exclaimed. Responding to the surprised murmurs, Lane confirmed once again, "Indeed, if you don't meet a certain standard, you cannot join my class. If you are students of Lumen, this level is expected. Once you finish the test, submit it to my assistant, Ms. Anna, over there." Professor Anna, the first-year magic department assistant, waved in greeting. "Hand in your tests." Everyone started talking about Leo again. Looking at the questions on the test, he felt a heavy weight settle upon him. He was trembling uncontrollably. This was the first time in the series he'd ever shown such an expression. Is this really the current trend in magic? Why are the formulas so complicated? He complained internally. Time quickly passed. Everyone was still buried in their tests. And after finishing, they realized the test wasn't as difficult as they thought. "Hey, that was easier than I expected. But what's the answer to the last question?" "I solved everything except for that one." The group excitedly discussed their answers. Meanwhile, Leo felt like his head was about to explode. "I overthought it and only solved one question. I should have studied more modern magic before coming here," he thought anxiously to himself, and handed in his pathetic test paper to the teaching assistant. "Well, I should study magic on my own." Sound a chair scraping. He mumbled to himself and quickly left the classroom. Anyway, with his ancient magic knowledge, attending class would only embarrass him. Back to the handsome professor land. As soon as he collected the tests, he started grading them on the spot. Over the past century, magic seems to have evolved greatly. Magic that once required perfect understanding now can be used by simply memorizing the activation requirements. However, this development has lowered the overall skill level of mages. As Len said this, a beam of light shot out from the palm of his hand and into the air. Following that, the scenery inside the classroom changed, transforming into a vast and mystical space. Looking at the scene before them, the students in the class gasped in awe. Seeing this, Len didn't keep them in suspense and immediately explained, "This is the essence of magic that I have created. I created it from the end to the beginning. I want you to become capable of researching and creating your own magic. That's why I gave you this test. 49 questions, each worth 1 point based on simple memorization, and a final question worth 51 points. Analyze the true nature of magic. I hope everyone here will become wizards capable of solving it." Speaking of wizards, Louise looked at her test, a perplexed expression on her face. No surprise there. It was the only question she couldn't solve. Leo already gave up. I really wanted to take magic class with him. Such a shame, Chelsea thought to herself regretfully. At that moment, the teaching assistant, Anna, seemed to have noticed something and rushed over to Len. She whispered in his ear, Professor, a student solved question 50. Hearing this, the handsome professor's eyes widened in surprise. Then, he burst into laughter, overflowing with joy. Who is it among all of you? There's one person. For the first time in history, someone achieved a perfect score. Please stand up. Who is it? Come on, don't keep us in suspense. Leon's face flushed with excitement. However, Anna beside him quickly interjected. They didn't get a perfect score, Professor. Hearing that, Leon's enthusiasm didn't diminish. He seemed to think it was a matter of course. Really? It seems like some other questions were skipped. Too much time was spent on the last question. That's a bit unfortunate, but still, come on up here. That's not quite it. He only answered the last question. Anna softly clarified, wiping the smile right off Leon's face. What's his name? He asked again. Is Student Leo Blog here? Anna replied. Then, would Student Leo Blog please stand up? As she spoke, Lin looked around at all the students. However, Leo, after submitting his test, had already left ages ago. Where could he be? Finally, Chelsea, the mage, spoke up and explained. Student Leo left after finishing his test. Okay, scene changes to Leo's location. He's happily enjoying ice cream with Julia. Right now, he's telling her about the magic class test, making the swordswoman laugh heartily. Haha, so you left after only solving one question? First, the chick in the class summit, and only solved one question in that pathetic magic class. Do you realize you're doing something wrong? Wrong? If you're a knight major student, you should focus on your swordsmanship. Leo, feeling a bit irritated, retorted, so, want to have a stamina training session with me then? That's a bit. Siria's voice became a bit flustered at Leo's suggestion. But just then, their conversation was interrupted by Professor Rand. So, you're a knight major student, huh? Are you Leo Borg, the one who looked down on my class? Why did you leave after solving only one question? Were they too easy, so you thought they weren't worth answering? He spoke with his eyes bulging in anger. On the other side, Leo didn't want to offend the professor, so he immediately explained. Professor, there seems to be a misunderstanding. I don't think I aced the test. Every question except the last one was too difficult, so I couldn't solve any of them. I learned magic by reading ancient magic books, so I'm not familiar with any modern questions. Turning back to Professor Land, his expression changed with every word. Then, instead of getting angry at Leo, he picked him up like a small cat and said with an excited face, Follow me. With that, the professor happily dragged Leo away, like a toy, leaving him with no ability to resist. Meanwhile, swordswoman Julia looked on, completely dumbfounded. She couldn't understand what was happening. Is that Professor Lumen, the magical theorist? That eccentric man? The swordswoman muttered, confusion evident in her eyes. Just then, the professor's assistant Anna arrived, her face etched with exhaustion. Did you see the professor, Phila? Did something strange happen? She spoke between gasps for air, clearly out of breath, likely from chasing after the professor. Hearing this, Julia turned and recounted everything she had witnessed. He just left here a moment ago, but suddenly he grabbed Leo and dragged him away. Upon hearing this, Anna's face paled with fright and hurriedly chased after him. Oh my God! What's that crazy guy planning to do this time? She screamed internally, returning to Professor Land's location. He had dragged Leo to a meeting room and written a series of questions on the board, demanding, solve these. Hearing this, student Leo, although a bit confused about the situation, quickly started working on the problems. For Professor Land, this was a test for Leo, an assessment of his abilities. If he didn't solve the last question by sheer luck, then he must have his own magic system inside his head. Now show me. I will understand the true nature of your thoughts. But that wasn't all. Leo stopped writing and turned to say, I've solved them all. Seeing this, beads of sweat started pouring down the handsome professor's face. You solved all these problems in your head? Yes, something like that. Leo shrugged in response, making Professor Len drool with envy. Finally, he muttered to himself. Now, back to Professor Andy. While walking down the hallway, he suddenly spotted Professor Lin running straight towards him, with a look on his face like he'd just won the lottery. Seeing his colleague's expression, for some reason, Andy suddenly felt a sense of unease and immediately turned to leave. However, Lin wasn't going to let him go that easily. A second later, Lin lunged forward, grabbing Andy's ankles with both hands. With eyes full of gratitude, he said, Thank you, Professor Andy. Thank you so much. In response, Andy immediately used his magic to lift Len into the air and warned, "This isn't the first time I've seen you act impulsively, but today you've gone too far." To this, Len maintained a cheerful and excited expression, explaining that he was talking about the magic genius Leo Bob, the student Andy had recommended as the freshman representative. That student truly is a genius. At this point, it was Andy's turn to feel confused by what he had just heard. Magic? But isn't he a knight? Leo must become a wizard, no matter the cost. I won't let his talent be wasted swinging around those pieces of metal. Sending him to the Knight Order is an insult to the entire field of magic. Len shook at furiously. Just then his assistant, Anna, arrived. Seeing her, Anbai released a spell, causing the wizard to plummet towards the ground. Fortunately, Anna had anticipated this and sped up at the last moment, catching her superior just in time. "Thank you, Anna," Len said with a cheerful smile. "We really need to get back to class." His assistant seethed, her face twitching with anger. She muttered to herself that one day she would kill this lunatic. At the same time, Leo slowly approached from behind. Hearing his footsteps, Professor Andy turned around. He nodded, making Leo feel a bit awkward. Mages don't change with time. They're all crazy. Time quickly passed. 1 week later, the trial classes ended. And now, our protagonist was lying on the rooftop of a building, engrossed in a book. The book was titled, "Hey, is the starting hero really a cheat?" Closing the book, Leo let out a heavy sigh because he couldn't find any more useful information. After finishing the book, meanwhile, in Headmaster Callion's office, while he was hard at work, suddenly, the 3 homeroom teachers of the magic, night, and summoning classes burst into the room, each holding an application form. "Please take a look at this, sir." The form stated Leo had applied to all 3 majors. This was unprecedented in the Academy's history. Each teacher wanted Leo in their class. They wanted him to focus on just one major. And so, even inside the headmaster's office, the bickering continued. The 3 teachers were at each other's throats. Even Callion couldn't help but chuckle. All right, let's see. This reminds me of that fictional hero, the great 5th hero, also known as the starting hero Kai, the only one to master every class in history. Scene changes to a running track. Meanwhile, the 2 girls, Julia and Chelsea, are also out for a run, while their friend, Casey Anio, is relaxing and comments, "Man, why are they even training on the weekend?" In response, Leo explains, "Chelsea asked me to train her." "Then why are they just running? Where are their weapons?" Kay asks. And to this question, before Leo can answer, Julia and Chelsea, tired, she spoke up for him. "That's our stamina. Stamina is a crucial aspect of a battle mage. That's why we're running. Now, if you'll excuse us." The mage waved her hand dismissively at Kay, as if shooing away a fly, so she could sit next to Leo, and next to the main character, no less. Her expression did a complete 180, a stark contrast to the annoyance she showed Kay. "It's so nice to run on the weekend. I've missed this feeling. I want to run with you too, Leo." "Really?" Leo asked curiously. Meanwhile, the swordsman, Julia, overhearing this, spat out all the water in her mouth, causing Chelsea to look at her too, with a disgusted look. "Gross. What's wrong with you?" Turning towards Leo. He obviously knew why Julia acted that way, so he said, "I was planning on running away with you anyway. Let's do this properly." "I told you I'm not running away with you," Celia yelled from the side. Seeing their reactions, Kay got curious. "What's going on between you two? You seem pretty close. I thought you guys were dating." In response to Kay's question, he pointed at Leo and explained to the orange-haired guy, "Geez, he's my relative, the son of my father's younger sister's aunt." Hearing this explanation, the 2 people in front couldn't contain their surprise, and their eyes widened. Could he be from the Schrödinger family? Not exactly. It's a bit complicated, but let's just leave it at that. Julia waved her hand dismissively, not wanting to elaborate. Perhaps even she didn't fully understand the reason. She brought up Leo, after letting the 2 girls before him rest for a bit. He stood up and suggested, "All right, let's get down to business." Hearing him say that, Chelsea, the mage, was brimming with excitement. "Sure, let's go." Nearby, Kai the alchemist watched them train and decided not to intrude any longer. "Well then, I'll go explore the city of Lumia." With that reply, Julia, the knight, turned and looked at him with pleading eyes. Wait, take me with you. Before she could finish, she was dragged away like a chicken by our protagonist. Looking at her pitiful state, it's hard to know what to say. Why can't I ever meet a decent noble? He wonders to himself. Time quickly passes until class placement day. In classes 1 through 5, the moment our protagonist walks in, his friend Kay waves him over. Taeju, over here. Our protagonist approaches and asks, did you already know you were in class 5? There's nothing I don't know, Kay says confidently, puffing out his chest. Then, Taeju glances at the mage. Chelsea was dozing off at his desk and let out a gasp of surprise. Huh? Chelsea's here too? Looking at her exhausted state, Kay turned to Leo with a suspicious look. What did you do to her over the weekend? Just some basic training. Leo shrugged. Chelsea, overhearing this, vowed to herself never to participate in basic training again. At that moment, for some reason behind Leo, a few sneering voices from some upperclassmen could be heard. So, this is the infamous Class 5, huh? I wonder how many of you will be left after the first semester. My condolences to you poor freshmen. Haha, they said condolences, but their faces show no sign of sadness. However, they shouldn't have said that, because right after that, their homeroom teacher walks in. How pathetic. I think you two are far more pathetic. Wouldn't you agree? The voice belongs to a teacher who looks like a homeless person. His name is Harris Edmel. He's the homeroom teacher of Class 1A at Lumen Academy. His nickname is The Wall. Instead of mourning, he mutters just one word. Chairs. Immediately, the two students in front of him brace themselves, forming a human chair, and the homeroom teacher casually sits down on them. Ironically, he mocks the other students. Well, hello there, you useless bunch of rejects. This is the class for the bottom feeders, the freshmen with the lowest scores. I'm sure you've heard rumors about me. The Wailing Wall. Does anyone here know why I was chosen to be the homeroom teacher for this class? Can't hear the teacher's question. Our usually talkative classmate nervously raises his hand. Yes? Is it to help us improve our scores? In response to this question, Mr. Harris turns to face him with a look of disdain. Kato Mas, a typical answer from the bottom of the barrel. No one in this pathetic class understands the duty of a Lumen Academy student. Is that so? The mage, Chelsea, also raised her hand, sharing her opinion. It was about conquering the hero world through practical missions. Hearing her, Harris nodded in satisfaction. Exactly. That's the point. But all I see are those who will die the moment they step into the hero world. It's better to expel these pathetic creatures who only hold back their teammates and die prematurely. That's why I decided to take charge of Class 5. And that's why they call me the Wailing Wall. He then observed Leo's incredibly calm expression and thought to himself, that guy might actually survive. Let's teach these naive chicks what a cruel society this is. Then, Harris instructed everyone to change their clothes, get changed, and head to the training grounds. It's time for combat class. Time passes quickly. Cut to the training grounds. Everyone's already changed into their training gear and assembled. Harris is lounging off to the side, looking like he's on vacation. Let's begin this lesson. A place to examine and rectify the rotten mindset you've developed since entering Lumen Academy. What do you think will save you in the real world, where life and death hang in the balance? Answer the question. A pink-haired girl hesitantly says, wouldn't it be my comrades fighting beside me? Her name is Nella Cavan, specializing in the night class. Special note, possesses a recovery attribute aura. As for her answer, Harry shook his head. No, it's about your potential, only when you hone your skills, letting them shine through every danger. Can you begin to help your teammates? But are you confident in your ability to protect your teammates? In another corner, an eager hand shot up confidently. I am confident, Professor, a voice called from the back. Hearing this, Harris, the homeless-looking teacher, let out a surprised, oh, let's see what you can do then. As a magic knight, create a fireball. Ella heard the request. With confidence, Ella conjured a fireball in her palm. However, seeing this, Harry was somewhat disappointed and mocked her. Is that all? With that fireball? I doubt. You could even kill an ant. On the opposite side, Ella was naturally not that simple. What if I add more magic power like this? She said, and then increased her own magic power, pouring it into the fireball. She pulled it apart, and to everyone's astonishment, it formed two giant fireballs. They radiated an immense heat, forcing the surrounding students to hastily step back. Seeing this, the students couldn't help but gasp in awe. Not only were there 2 fireballs now, but they were also twice the size. Up ahead, even Harris had to acknowledge her skill. Impressive, I must say. Why don't you try hitting this tiny creature with that magnificent fireball of yours? With that, he cast his own magic, summoning a spirit in human form, but incredibly small. Next, the little spirit zipped towards Ella with lightning speed, and, for some reason, he booped her on the nose. Then he burst out laughing, and, even though she didn't understand why this tiny being was laughing at her, the fire mage, Igya, couldn't contain her anger. Immediately, she began to conjure 2 fireballs in his hands to attack. However, it couldn't even touch the hem of this spirit's clothes. The little spirit then flew back to Harris and covered its mouth, giggling. Ella stood beside them. Seeing Ella's failure, Harris continued his provocation. What's the point of increasing it to 2 balls? If you can't even hit one? Have you finally realized what you lack? It's the ability to use your skills effectively. You need to train your abilities and surpass your limits. Have you forgotten? Until you catch this wind spirit, then our class won't end. Show me everything you've got. Descendants of Lumen. Turn towards Leo. Although Mr. Harris's words were a bit harsh, he completely agreed with them. His words might have been a little rough, but everything he said was true. Let me give it a try. With that said, he calmly walked onto the field. Watching his back, Harris spoke with anticipation in his voice. All right, Leo Bob. Let me see. Are you full of lies like the fictional hero, Kai? Or are you a fake, like him? Or are you the first to truly possess all the attributes? Time quickly passed. All the students in the class started to rush in, surrounding the spirit user. But no matter how hard they tried, they're still being toyed with like playthings. Seeing this, Leo, who had been observing from the sidelines, also begins to emanate an aura of power. He then channels the aura into the soles of his feet and executes a burst of speed. A powerful jump propels him forward as fast as lightning. Elsewhere, Chelsea and Kay are breathing heavily, exhausted from chasing the small creature. Damn, he's so fast. How are we supposed to catch him? Kay complains. At that moment, Leo uses his air step skill to launch himself into the air. Then, seizing the opportunity, while the fairy student was still happily playing with the other students in the class, Leo swooped down from above, fast as an arrow. But even though caught slightly off guard, the fairy's reaction speed was nothing short of extraordinary. At the very last moment, he nimbly flew to the side and dodged just in time. But this was all part of Leo's plan. A slight smile spread across his face as he focused his energy. His aura lashed out like a whip, flying straight towards the fairy. The fairy student thought that Leo would now easily be able to complete this test. But wouldn't you know it, the notorious troublemaker, Ran, appears out of nowhere, suddenly dashing forward with lightning speed and snatching Leo's prize at the very last second. At the same time, a homeroom teacher approaches from behind him and claps his hands to get everyone's attention. It seems like we, Class 1, need to teach you all a lesson. This white-haired man with a cunning face is named Shutson. He's the homeroom teacher of Class 1-1 at Lumen Academy. Special note, he placed second in the graduation poll, while Mr. Harris placed first. So, it seems they don't get along very well. Hearing Shutson's voice, Mr. Harris calmly sips his milk and replies, "Oh, is that so? Then you'll teach in my place." In response to this, Sechin looked at him like he was looking at a pile of trash. Meanwhile, Kay sensed the tension between the two and excitedly said, "This is a clash between 2 titans of Lumen Academy. Both of them have worked at Lumen Academy for over 25 years. From what I've heard, Professor Zine, Yura, and Lane were all students of theirs." Hearing this from him, Nana turned around in surprise and asked, "Whoa, really? How did you know that?" Across from them, Kay's face flushed red as he excitedly shared, "I'm always in the know." Huh. Seeing this, the mage Chelsea up front almost threw up. Back to the homeroom teacher, Mr. Trent. He let out a loud laugh. "Ha, Harris. I don't know what you're up to by taking charge of the failing Class 7, but I'll figure it out soon." I propose a competition between Class 1 and Class 5. As for the competition, it will be the sport of Lumion. Ball. Pastera, who was standing in front, couldn't understand what Mr. Harris was thinking. After hearing the proposal, he excitedly stood up and accepted. Just as expected. You truly are a genius, Mr. Harris, said Mr. Chen. Learning through practical experience is the best. Hearing these words, for some reason, Mr. Trend felt a sense of unease. Class 1 will probably win, he said hesitantly, while Harris wore an expression of complete indifference to the outcome. It doesn't matter. Just focus on teaching your class. Hearing that, Sukjin could only grit his teeth in frustration. Even the students behind him felt a pang of pity for him. How can I keep losing bets on the graduation poll? Sukjin wondered to himself. Professor Song Chan looked pathetic. For some reason, the students inwardly sympathized. Then, Harris officially announced to his class, Class 5, I'm going to give you all a chance to hone your skills. We're going to have a Batera match against Class 1. Furthermore, if you lose, you'll all be expelled. The teacher's face was completely serious. No joke whatsoever. Hearing this, everyone was completely stunned at first. Then, they immediately asked him to make sure they hadn't misheard anything. Wait, did you say expel? Are you serious, sir? But this is only the first match, and our class has 3 team captains. In response, the teacher, Harris, seemed unconcerned about the difference in strength between the two sides. Then you'll have to work even harder. Surpass your limits. Besides, what's there to worry about? The freshman representative is in your class. Choose 6 representatives to compete in the Batera. Leo finished speaking. He just glanced at the main character, and immediately, it dawned on him. He realized the true intention of this teacher. This was clearly a test. But Professor Harris's look wasn't one of hatred. It wasn't out of spite. Some students had already lost their spirit after just 1 week at Lumen Academy, and it wasn't hard to see why. Perhaps Professor Harris wanted him to inspire the 5th-year students who were on the verge of giving up. So there had to be a way during this Barcelona match to boost the morale of the 5th years. Leo made a silent vow, and soon enough, both classes began choosing their representatives for the competition. As expected, Class 1 chose their captains, the strongest among them. Looking at the opposing team's strength, the sorceress Chelsea began to strategize. So, after getting expelled, how am I supposed to explain this to my family without sounding completely crazy? Seeing the panic in her eyes, Leo couldn't help but ask, why do you look so scared? In response, the mage girl set him straight. She helped Leo understand the situation. It seems you've never heard of Pastella, probably because you're from the countryside. But Pastella is a combat sport, a long-standing tradition at Lumen Academy. Hearing this, Leo curiously turned to look at her. Isn't that just a ball game? He naively asked, and at that moment, CA covered her mouth to explain. It's not just a simple ball game. The problem is, it's an incredibly dangerous ball game. Now let's talk about Syria up ahead. Looking at the bewildered expressions on Leo's team, she covered her mouth, laughing like Chelsea just won the championship. Why do you look so scared? Already accepted your upcoming 7 losses? Syria's voice was filled with provocation, making Chelsea's eyes roll back in anger. Who's afraid of who? She retorted. You think I'll lose to a Schrodinger's family member? She yelled out in frustration. To boost the team's morale, Leo put his arm around them and declared, Don't worry, our class won't lose. Hearing this, Julia, who was ahead, clicked her tongue in annoyance and warned Leo, Just you wait, I'll show you the results of my special training. This time, I won't lose to you. Leo's blog mentioned Professor Seijin again. After letting both sides bicker for a bit, he finally spoke up. Participants from each class, please enter the arena. Hearing that, Leo turned to look at his classmates and asked, Who will go with me? Hearing this, everyone recoiled in fear. But fortunately, not everyone in the class was a coward. 2 mage girls, Chelsea and Ella, immediately stepped forward. I'll teach them a lesson, Chelsea said, cracking her knuckles. Meanwhile, Ella wanted to show Harris what she was capable of. If we lose, we'll be expelled. I'll use all my rage to win this. I'll show Professor Harris what I'm capable of. Meanwhile, the mage Nana and a timid boy step forward. Finally, the alchemist Kay, who was hiding in the back, is dragged out. Kay, you knew you were last, right? But why? Just shout here. But Leo already picked him. With everyone assembled, Leo turns to the professor and reports. Class 5 is ready. Professor Song nods. Good. Let the match begin. He tosses the ball in his hand. Into the air. Everyone on both sides watches the ball intently. Without any warning, both Leo and Euron exploded with incredible speed, racing towards the ball. In the end, it was Euron, with his lightning-fast reflexes, who snatched the ball right out from under Leo's nose. All right, then my class will go first, he said coldly. Meanwhile, as Leo landed back on the ground, he quickly asked, his blonde-haired friend, Tay, quickly explain the rules to me. In response, Tay knew time was short, so he gave a quick summary. Oh, the rules of Barcelona are simpler than you think. You just need to channel your energy into the ball and shoot it into the goal, without using your hands or feet. The first team to score 11 points wins. More info. This blonde guy is Thomas, from the summoning department. On the other side, Euron starts focusing his energy, preparing to attack. Seeing this, someone in the crowd shouts, "Here it comes! Get ready!" As soon as he finishes speaking, Euron channels his power into his fist and strikes the ball in front of him. The impact deforms the ball and sends it flying forward with incredible speed. Seeing this, Leo, standing in front, is startled by the ball's velocity. He quickly jumps aside to dodge it. The rubber ball then slams into the ground and flew straight towards the goal. Kay stared in disbelief, completely bewildered. Seeing this, the first-year students erupted in cheers. Dermora, great job. On the other side, the fifth-year students began to panic. Their faces turned pale. Even Tay seemed to have lost all confidence. It looks like Professor Harris is going to expel us all. Beside him, Leo didn't lose his composure. Instead, he turned and asked, how do we gain control of the ball? Answering the question, Tay explained that there were 3 ways. First, when the ball goes outside the opponent's force field. Second, when we catch the ball. And finally, before Tay could finish explaining, Nella's anxious voice suddenly rang out. Dodge! A voice called out. Leo and Ty both turned around and saw, at that very moment, the rubber ball hit the mage Ella square in the back. Yahello cried out in pain, and the one who threw it was none other than the swordsman Ciola. What are you two whispering about over there? You can't even focus on the game, Ciola said with a chuckle. Seeing this, Leo and Ty rushed over to check on their teammate. Ty quickly explained, third rule, no direct attacks or obstructing opponents. That was the third rule. A player is out after being hit by the ball. The only way to attack them is with the ball itself. Hearing that, Leo finally understood the rules of the game. He calmly reached out, grasped the ball, and nodded. Thanks for the explanation. Now it's our turn. Meanwhile, Professor Schutzen, despite the situation unfolding favorably for his class, felt a strange sense of unease. A vague feeling of anxiety lingered in his heart. In Barcelona, teams with fire attribute users have an overwhelming advantage due to their high destructive power. And among the families, the Schundinger family's flames are the strongest. Thinking about this, he spoke up, addressing the lazy professor beside him. I'll still accept it, even if, knowing that Sirius Schrodinger is in my class. I don't know what you're planning, but it'll be tough for your class to win. Harris, beside him, didn't respond, only yawning repeatedly. This annoyed Sejong. Hey, can you at least answer properly? He pressed him again. Only then did Harris finally open his mouth to speak. Sejong, do you remember your first student? The child from the Schrodinger family? Hearing this, an image immediately surfaced in Sejong's mind, and he nodded. Of course, how could I forget? The Queen of Barcelona. You still remember her? Harris smiled slightly and reminded him. That queen's daughter is in class 5. Meanwhile, the 5th grade students, seeing their class already weaker than the others, now further weakened by Ella's injury, had completely given up hope. We're doomed. How are we supposed to get into Lumen Academy now? It's going to end just like this? At the same moment, the swordswoman, Julia, looked at Leo with a worried expression. Looks like he's finally made up his mind. Following her gaze, they saw a powerful flame erupt from Leo. Incoming! Look out! Someone shouted. And right after those words, our protagonist mustered all his strength and threw the ball straight towards the opponent's goal. However, Class 1's strength is undeniable. Before the ball could reach their goal, the ice mage, Chloe, used her magic to create a wall of ice. blocking Leo's shot. As long as I'm here. Scoring is impossible, she declared confidently. But at that moment, Leo suddenly appeared beside her and muttered, I can score. Without giving her a chance to react, Leo channeled his power into his feet. Leaping high into the air, he aimed directly at the ball trapped within the ice wall and unleashed a powerful punch, striking the ball directly, causing it to instantly break free from the ice wall's confinement and fly into the goal. On the other side, Professor Shazin, seeing Leo's quick reaction, offered a word of praise. Inwardly, he thought, his battle sense is truly remarkable. Seeing this, Professor Harris also smiled with satisfaction. As for Leo's classmates, they seemed to find a glimmer of hope and shouted in unison, Go Leo! Go Class 5! Looking at the opposing team, their morale was restored. Professor, said Trend couldn't help but crack a smile. I see. So, this is when the real match begins. Time flew by quickly. Both sides traded blows, the score remaining close. Neither team was willing to give an inch. At that moment, Duran launched another thunderous throw, sending the ball hurtling towards the opponent's goal. With his throw, K took a gamble and used both hands to try and catch it. A surge of lightning energy engulfed the ball instantly, causing his body to tremble uncontrollably in pain. But at least he managed to stop the ball. Well, I'm almost out of mana anyway. All right, I'll leave the rest to you, Leo, he said. This guy was completely drained, unable to compete any further. Ella and Chelsea helped him off the field. On the sidelines, the group watched the scoreboard with worried expressions, their brows furrowed with concern. It's 10-10. This is the deciding point. But they have 3 of the top students, and we only have Leo. This is a huge disadvantage. On the opposite side, the Ice Mage knew the next play would determine everything. So, she went all out, preparing to unleash her full power. I might fail a magic theory test, but I will not lose this. With a wave of her hand, she cast a powerful spell. Suddenly, 4 clones of her appear, surrounding her. Not to be outdone, Saya and Duran also envelop themselves in powerful auras, ready to confront the protagonist. Come at me, kid, Julia yells. In response to their challenge, Leo focuses his energy, channeling it into his feet. Then suddenly, he vanishes before their eyes. They're stunned. He's so fast. The 3 of them murmur. Then, with incredible speed, Leo passes Julia, startling her. Realizing Leo's true intention, she realizes he's not attacking. He's focusing on scoring Lewis. From behind, Lewis immediately realizes the problem. Is this an illusion? How superficial. Where is he really? As she thinks, she focuses magic power into her eyes to find Leo's true form. But to her eyes, all of Leo's images seem real. Or at least she can't tell which one is the real body. This leaves Lewis stunned. And just like that, Leo gets past her and scores. Starlight magic. How can a human use the magic of the ancestors? Lewis wonders in a daze. Meanwhile, witnessing the outcome, the referee announced, the winner is Class 5. Seeing the result, the 2 students from Class 5 embraced each other, overjoyed to the point of tears. Thank goodness. We're not expelled. I was so scared I'd have to go straight home. Overhearing them, Professor Shezin became curious and turned to Harris, asking, Expel? What are they talking about? Harris burst out laughing. I guess you could say that's their motivation. Meanwhile, the 3 of them, Lewis and Duran, were despondently holding their faces. Seeing this, Cetrin sighed and went to comfort them. Are you 3 upset about losing? Regardless of the outcome, when a match ends, you should always greet your opponents. You all did an excellent job. You fought hard to win for your class. Those who cheered on their friends, and those who gave their all in the arena. You should all be proud of yourselves. Stuntat, in front of Class 1 students. Hearing these words from their teacher, they looked at him with admiration. Unfortunately, this heartwarming moment didn't last more than 3 seconds before it was ruined by Harris's mocking laughter from behind. Ruin. Hey loser, get over here and let's end this. Hearing his words, Schützen was furious, but he had no choice but to step forward and say a few words. Both classes performed exceptionally well. Class 1 showcased their talent and abilities, but Class 5 never gave up. They persevered until the very end and overcame every challenge. They recognized their limits and successfully overcame a difficult situation. We hope that you will all work and compete with each other harmoniously. So everyone, let's shake hands. Hearing that, the students from both sides extended their hands in greeting. You lasted longer than I thought. I thought so too. I thought you'd lose sooner, Siola said with a laugh. I was going to say the same to you. You're as stubborn as a squid prince. Chelsea replied from beside her. Jiang also said to Duran with a bright smile. But we won this time. On the opposite side, Duran didn't reply after hearing that, but just stared at him, making Kai a little flustered. Elsewhere, the mage Lewis was still upset, on the verge of tears from her loss. Leo reached out his hand and comforted her. You were amazing, Lewis. With a little more experience, you'll definitely become extraordinary. Hearing this, the mage looked straight at him and asked, Are you mocking me? Someday, I will definitely defeat you. She muttered to herself and reached out, grasping Leo's hand tightly. Just like that, a month quickly passed. Now, Leo's group was enjoying tea together. Meanwhile, Kai was training like a machine and asked the climbing group, By the way, which club are you guys planning to join? Looking at Leo's ravenous eating habits, Chelsea, with her aristocratic demeanor, felt a sense of disgust. She reminded him, Have some table manners, before returning to the topic of climbing. Leo shared that. He wanted to start his own club. Naturally, this bold idea, surprisetkaya. Hearing this, Chelsea, the mage, excitedly said, If Leo is starting a club, I want to join too. What kind of club is it? Kaya asked. To this question, Leo openly shared his thoughts. It's the Forgotten Heroes Research Club. I want to learn more about forgotten heroes and the original hero. Kai heard Leo's words. Kai and Chelsea exchanged wide-eyed glances and shook their heads. But he's not someone forgotten, Kai said. He's just fictional. It seemed like no one would join his club. Kay chuckled. Chelsea, however, immediately realized something. If what Kay said was true, she could be alone. With Leo in the club, I want to join. Chelsea shouted. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by loud shouts. Whoa, they're back. Hearing this, Kay seemed to remember something and jumped up from his seat. Whoa, that's right, it's today, the day the 5th year's return. After clearing the dungeon, the hero muttered to himself. He rushed outside to get a better look. Fragments of the heroic saga are scattered all over the world. Occasionally, they act up and create dungeons. These places are called hero dungeons, and the upperclassmen at Lumen Academy go to clear these hero dungeons and collect the fragments of the heroic saga. They're gone for at least 2 weeks, sometimes even more than a month. Ma must have gone through the same thing, Leo thought to himself. Beside him stood the mage Blog, looking at the upperclassmen, her eyes filled with admiration. Wow, so this is the peak of Lumen Academy? In response, the young man Kay puffed out his chest a bit and started introducing everyone to her. The muscular man in the east is Lee Damua. The woman beside him in the south is Toro Ion. And the pale person with the hood, I think that's Unta. But I don't see that person. Ka said, puzzled. It was as if there should have been someone else with those. 3. Which person? Leo asked curiously, and the head of Lumen Academy, Student Council President Gull, replied. Just then, a hand reached out from behind and grabbed Leo's shoulder, pulling him away, and waited for Kai to return and continue speaking. But he realized his friend's voice had vanished into thin air. Let's move back to our main character. The person who just dragged him away turned out to be the swordswoman, Celia. Seeing her hurried demeanor, Leo became curious and asked Celia, What's going on? In response to his question, Celia said that Leo needed to go with her to Lemuria City because the student council president wanted to see him. Why does the student council president want to see me? Leo asked, his eyes filled with curiosity. However, Celia wasn't entirely clear about this, so she couldn't explain. It's true you don't really care about school-related matters anyway. We'll find out when we get there, Celia said with a sigh. Time quickly passed. The scene shifts to a room with Eastern-style architecture. Julia is feeling a little restless, looking around and muttering to herself. I wonder why he wanted to meet in a place like this. What? But it smells so good here. Leo shrugs and continues. Before they can talk for much longer, the student council president arrives. The moment he appears, the swordswoman rushes towards him. Like a kitten, Big brother, Ryu gently pats his little sister's head. and nods a greeting to Leo. It's a pleasure to meet you, Leo. Leo, I've been hearing a lot about you. You're aiming for, about becoming an all-powerful hero, right? This is Rain from the Night Department. He's also the student council president of Lumen. Food first, then talk. Before starting the conversation, Rain summoned a basket of steamed buns and offered them to the group. Does this suit everyone's taste? He asked gently. Oh, yes, Leo replied. Then, Rain noticed his younger sister. Looked a bit anxious. What's wrong, Siola? He asked. In response, Siola said that it was her first time trying this. That's why she had that expression. She then slowly took a bite, and the moment it entered her mouth, her eyes suddenly flew open, and she gasped, It's delicious! Seeing her expression, Rai chuckled in satisfaction. This is the restaurant I wanted to bring you to. Once you join, Lumen spoke up, pausing briefly. Then, he shifted the conversation towards Leo. But what a surprise! You're actually that person's son. Across from him, Leo knew who he was talking about, and asked, Have you met my mother before? Yes, I met her a few times when I was young. She was quite famous. Back in school. Rai nodded, piquing Leo's curiosity. My mother, to explain, Rai began listing Lady Jenna's achievements. That's right. She's a living legend. For example, she once said that the dorm food was terrible, so she rallied all the students and stormed the principal's office. Turns out, she was the mastermind behind that famous incident, Celia exclaimed. That's right. Rai said with a laugh, turning back to Leo. While everyone was enjoying themselves, chatting away, Leo was quietly assessing the student council president's strength. He had to admit, as expected, he was worthy of being called the strongest. Among the students at Lumen, it seemed like it was only a matter of time before he became a hero. Leo muttered something under his breath. After everyone finished eating, Guy cheerfully stood up and said, Let's go get some dessert. I'll pay. So you guys go ahead. Hearing this, both Leo and Julia quickly left the table at the same time. Suddenly, Rai felt a warmth in his chest. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a glowing piece of paper. What's this? Rai whispered. Time quickly passed. The scene shifted to Leo's classroom. The sorceress Ella spoke up, asking, Professor, I have a question. In response, the cocky professor put his feet up on the desk and asked with a smug look, Ella Layden, let's hear your pointless question. Hearing this, Ella wasn't angry. Instead, she raised her hand and said loudly, Why haven't we chosen a class president yet? I heard all the other classes have already chosen theirs. That's right, her Thai classmate nodded in agreement, only after hearing her mention it. Did the professor remember? Class president? All right, I forgot about that. He then turned to Leo and suggested, Leo, you do it. Without waiting for Leo's response, the other two immediately complained. What? Professor, shouldn't we choose a class representative democratically? Through a vote. To answer Harris's question, he threw a half-meter tall stack of papers, walked up to the teacher's desk, and demanded, Class president, take these and sort them out. Looking at the mountain of paperwork, Ella recoiled, not daring to utter another word. Then, the loudspeaker mounted on the wall crackled to life. Attention, in just a moment, we will have a joint lecture on swarm research. All first-year students, please proceed to the auditorium. Hearing this, Leo glanced at the professor and asked, Professor, should we head over now? Indeed, Fong. That's the attitude of a class president, Harris agreed with a nod. The scene shifted to the auditorium. As instructed, students were slowly gathering together. And there, among them, Leo and Harris also ran into Lewis, the mage. But her current appearance piqued their curiosity. Hey Lewis, you look exhausted. Hearing the greeting, Lewis's eyes lit up a little. She immediately asked, Do you have any recovery potions left? Can you sell me some? Seeing that Harris wasn't stingy, he immediately tossed her 2 potions and said that was all he had. Beside him, Leo's voice was laced with worry. It's only the beginning of the year. Why are you pushing yourself so hard? Taking the potions, Lewis immediately chugged them down in one gulp. She said she was fine. Looking at the stubbornness on Lewis's face, Harris couldn't help but admire her. Whoa, that's impressive. She's top of the class in magical theory. Beside her, the sorceress Chelsea added, But I guess Lewis has no choice but to worry the moment Leo learns the latest magic trends. He could surpass her in the magic theory exam. Really? What's wrong with being second, Kai? Confused, she asked again. Chelsea also turned to look at him like he was an idiot. Are you really brain dead? Hello? She's a tower magician. We're combat mages, so it's okay to fall behind a bit. In theory, like research and investigation. Magic is the core of the magic tower. Her honor is being put at risk. Are you really a wizard? In response to this, the alchemist casually replies, first of all, of course, I use magic to live, and survival magic is my pride. Elsewhere, right after the student council president, Rai, realizes the piece of paper in his hand is glowing. He immediately goes to see Principal Calion. He tells him what happened. After hearing the story, the principal's expression changes. It becomes serious. When the broken heroism reacted, did this hero's fragment really react? He asks with a serious tone, and Rai nodded, confirming with absolute certainty. That's right, this fragment was so badly damaged that it shouldn't have been able to react anymore. But it did. Moreover, there weren't any other artifacts nearby. Hearing this, Headmaster Cardio asked, did it react again after that? No, sir. Rai shook her head, turning to the headmaster. The lack of information made it impossible for him to understand this strange phenomenon. Let's see. I suppose we'll have to investigate this further. You must be tired after just returning. Good work. He then called his secretary, Elena, into the room and asked her to bring this to the Hall of Beginnings. In the lecture hall, the freshman orientation is about to begin. Yes, I understand. Elena nodded and quickly made her way to the hall, leaving the old headmaster deep in thought. Sometimes, even small fragments like these can react. If someone recorded in the Hero Chronicles comes into contact, it will react. The scene shifts to a lecture hall at Lumen Academy, where, at this moment, an intermediate horology class for first-year students is in session. The instructor is Professor Athene, responsible for classes 1 through 8. Since the classes are combined, the students are chattering like a marketplace, making the petite professor flustered. Quiet, please. Athena calls out, but the students' mouths keep firing like machine guns, pushing Athena's patience to its limit. She had finally reached her limit. Suddenly, behind her, the silhouette of a unicorn appeared. At the same time, the professor's personality did a complete 180. If you don't want to get hit, shut up, you damn brats. Do you want to die? Who should I deal with first? She roared, her current demeanor a stark contrast to her previously gentle expression. Damn it, you just wouldn't listen, would you? It was like a switch had been flipped. Suddenly, Athena was back. Her gentle expression returned. Finally, some peace and quiet. Thank you, she said cheerfully, causing the students to nearly pee their pants in fear. That's terrifying. Oh my God. No matter how many times I see it, it's still scary. Our professor is truly frightening. The 8th grade students trembled inwardly, thinking. Meanwhile, Leo, witnessing her personality change as fast as a rocket, was also inwardly astonished. Turns out she was a psychic in her past life. Even in those times, psychics were extremely rare. Back to Athena, after seeing the class quiet down, she took out a dagger and began her lecture. We will begin the joint Hero Studies class for first-year students. After the appearance of the Hero Chronicles, this is the reason why hero families emerge. To open the world of a hero, you need a deeply connected object, or something closely related to that hero. Therefore, the descendants of heroes can open a hero's world more easily. This is why Lumen Academy, where the Hero Chronicles are kept, and these families have a deep connection. Although this is political, you could say, it's like the connection between a key and a treasure. Now, everyone understands why Hero Studies is important. Hero Studies is important because it helps us find clues to conquer a hero's world or understand them better. In your final year, you will choose a hero to inherit power from and challenge their Hero Chronicles. At the same time, Secretary Elena entered the lecture hall and handed Professor Athena the piece of paper, as if she had been informed beforehand. Professor Athena happily shared with everyone. Everyone, this is a fragment of a hero's journal, brought back by 5th-year students from Lumen Academy. Hearing her say that, everyone gasped in awe. Without letting the students' curiosity linger, Athena slightly opened the box. The students held their breath and gulped, curiously staring at the small box. However, before it was fully opened, Athena suddenly closed it. All right, she said, before experiencing this hero's journal fragment. Everyone, please tell me, about the goal you want to achieve as a hero. Across from her, seeing this, the other students also eagerly raised their hands. Next, the swordswoman Julia raised her hand to speak. I want to become a knight, surpassing all previous generations of my family. That's a wonderful goal, Athena praised. Meanwhile, the sorceress Lewis also shared her thoughts. I want to write a grimoire, containing my own original spells. I want to become someone who supports heroes, Kay declared resolutely. In his dream, also received praise from the female professor. It seems Kay wants to become someone who can support heroes. That's wonderful. Now about Leo. At this moment, he reveals his goal. My goal is to completely annihilate Erebos. His words caused the entire hall to fall into a dead silence. After about 2 seconds of silence, Professor Athena stumbles over her words. That's certainly an admirable goal. All right, next. Ignoring the strange looks around him, Leo calmly sits back down. Meanwhile, the upperclassmen start snickering. With that dream, isn't Leo aiming a little too high? The freshman representative's goal is quite something. As for Professors Harris and Seodun, after hearing Leo's declaration, Seodun glances over. He asks a colleague next to him, what do you think? It's chilling. He's not the type to spout nonsense. Harris frankly shares his feelings while pondering the protagonist's words. Millennia have passed since Arabo was shattered and sealed away, but he has been reborn many times over the years. Just one fragment of him reincarnating, he thought, is enough to bring disaster. But his dream is to completely destroy Irabo. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that things weren't so simple. Back to Professor Athena. After finishing her inquiries about the students' dreams, she continued. So, today we're going to read a page from the Hero Chronicles, recovered from a dungeon. After each class takes a guess at which hero the page belongs to, we'll learn how to conquer that hero's world. Now, in case anything unexpected happens, the professors from each class will be observing. So please don't cause any trouble. Hearing her say that, the students' heart rates started to increase rapidly. The excitement was palpable. After all, this is the first time we're interacting with the Hero Chronicles. The anticipation was thick in the air as whispers spread through the crowd. Without keeping the students waiting any longer, Professor Athenan continued. All right, so, class representatives, please come forward. Hearing this, Leo and the other familiar representatives ran up onto the stage. And at this moment, Athena announced, this time, 2 Hero Chronicles have been retrieved. Of course, we'll only be using one for today's lesson. The other one is a very small fragment. However, we brought it out to show you all that fragments like this also exist. As she spoke, she presented 2 boxes in front of Leo. Seeing this, Leo casually picked up the small piece of paper in front of him. But right after that, something unexpected happened. Everyone received a notification. Hero Chronicle has opened the world of Unknown. Chapter Unknown. Suddenly, a massive, intricate magic circle appeared above the stage. Elsewhere, Professor Shezin witnessed this and shouted, it's going out of control. As soon as he finished speaking, their figures vanished before everyone's eyes. When they reappeared, the group found themselves in a strange new world. It was an alien landscape with a blood-red sky. All around them were countless monster corpses of all shapes and sizes. Seeing this gruesome sight, a girl in the group screamed in terror. Hearing her scream, Professor Harris dropped his playful demeanor and spoke reassuringly. Brace yourselves. This is the hero's dungeon. Meanwhile, Professor Surge Shun also notices something. He points in a direction. Harris, I see a wall over there. Hearing this, everyone turns to where the professor is pointing and sees an ancient fortress with countless cracks spreading across its walls. This sight is all too familiar to Leo. During the Zainan Shudai disaster era, the last line of defense, the final city, the wall of Gatorland. If this is the right time, Leo mutters to himself. Suddenly, from behind them, a voice rings out. By my sanctuary, that's incredibly foolish. But we will save the world. Hearing a familiar voice, Leo turned around. He faced his former comrade and whispered in a voice only he could hear. Across from him stood Li Jaina. The black-haired girl gave a faint smile. and slowly dissolved into a beam of light. Then, the space around them shattered, and the group was transported back to the large hall. Everything happened so fast that the student representatives were completely confused. They had no idea what was going on. Professors, Chelsea asked, bewildered. What's happening? Seeing the situation, Professor Harris immediately ordered the class to be suspended. Everyone, please calm down and leave the lecture hall quickly. Upstairs, the students didn't need to be told twice. They ran out in a panic frenzy, shoes flying off. Only Leo remained deep in thought, staring at the piece of paper in his hand, because in that moment, he realized the significance of the paper. It was a page from Kai's diary, his personal journal. Nearby, Professor Harris watched him intently, a thoughtful expression on his face. What was he thinking? Time quickly passed. The scene shifted to fifth period. Leo's friends were asking him about his experience in that strange world of heroes. And after hearing Leo's story, the whole group was wide-eyed and speechless. You met the Wise King? That's incredible. This is a historic event. Is that the legendary hero, Lee Jinwoo's signature? The mage Chelsea said with admiration in her eyes. Not to mention her, even the mage Ella was filled with regret. Deeply remorseful. Why did I give up the class president position? To Leo? I should have been class president. I missed such a great opportunity. Ha, really? A boy named Kay said sarcastically. Immediately, the mage turned and punched him. Looks like today's your funeral, she said. Her fist flew like pistons, while the orange-haired guy just cowered, bracing for impact. Professor Harris coldly observed the whole scene from the doorway. I came here to scold the loudest class. Choose self-study or expulsion. Without waiting for a response, he turned and left, back with Leo. Since returning to class, he'd been lost in thought. He was dwelling on what just happened. Why was my heroic moment the only thing that was messed up? It was so bad that I couldn't even recognize it. Whose world is this? It's almost as if someone deliberately ruined my heroic moment. My heroic moment, a true successor to a hero's power. If someone doesn't want a new hero to emerge, it can only be that bastard, Erebos. But I need to investigate why my heroic power was divided. I've been secretly planning this all along. Time quickly passed by. 1 month later, the scene shifts to a magic class. The handsome Professor Randall points to a magic symbol on his back and explains, original? In other words, unique magic. This will be your midterm practical exam. Original magic is a type of magic that clearly expresses the mage's individuality. In this day and age, when the techniques for activating magic formations, the current trend is that mages no longer try to create original magic. However, this original magic could become a secret technique for self-defense in emergencies. For example, the star magic that every level learns is actually just a miniature replica of the original magic. Throughout history, only one person has been able to use true star magic, and that was its creator, the founder of Nebula Luna. Speaking of the mage, Chloe, upon hearing about star magic, she immediately glanced over at Leo, because she remembered that during the previous ball game, Leo had used that type of magic to get past herself. Beside her, as if realizing Lewis was staring at her, Leo glanced back at her, and she noticed that beside Lewis was some kind of magic book, radiating a dark aura, catching Leo's gaze. Lewis quickly put the book away. Was that a grimoire? Leo wondered to herself. Unaware of this, Professor Lane announced from the podium, class dismissed. Now, I'm sure you're all eager to discover your unique magical abilities. That's all for today. Hearing this, the students noisily filed out of the classroom. But just then, Leo, a little worried about the magic book, pulled Lewis aside. Wait, Chloe, would you like to have lunch with me? As he spoke, he thought about how Chloe had hidden the grimoire earlier, making him even more suspicious. However, he wasn't sure if the sorceress was wary of him, because she immediately refused. I don't have time for that. I'm certain I'll defeat you in the practical exam this time. Elsewhere, Kai saw the tension rising and rushed over to intervene. What's going on with you two? Leo, you devil. You dare challenge the top spot at the Ice Queen's Magic Academy? Responding to his words, Louise affirmed her own determination. I admit I lost to Leo in practical skills. However, when it comes to magical theory, I won't let anyone surpass me. So this time, no matter what, I will win. As Louise spoke, her eyes were filled with determination. Seeing this, Leo smiled and asked, "If I back down now, wouldn't that be disrespectful to you?" Across from them, Glowy nodded in agreement. Seeing this, our protagonist extended his hand and declared, "All right then, let's both give it our all." Meanwhile, our friend Kay, witnessing their handshake, like this, was filled with admiration. That's such a natural way to hold hands. Time quickly passes to late afternoon. The scene changes to the Hero Tower. Leo is currently here, searching for more clues for his Hero Chronicles. Somewhere around here is Lumen's Forbidden Library. If I can get there, maybe I can find some clues about the Lost Hero Chronicles. He thinks to himself as he calmly walks up the stairs. Meanwhile, some female students spot him and blush slightly. They whisper to each other, "Oh my gosh, isn't he a freshman? What's he doing here? He's so cute." Elsewhere, Leo hears a voice call out to him. "Leo blog, I've heard a lot about you from Professor Lane. It's a pleasure to meet you." The owner of the voice is Taro Ein. She's a fifth-year student in the Department of Magic. Standing before our protagonist, he recognizes her as a senior student and bows his head in greeting. "Hello, what's a freshman doing in the Hero Tower?" Toras, while extending her leg to block his path. Seeing her action, he quickly comes up with an excuse. "I'm here to see the Student Council President. If you join the Department of Magic, you'll have a chance." "I've already joined the Department of Magic," Leo calmly replies. Toro steps aside, clearing the way for him. "Thank you." Leo nods and says, before heading up the stairs, Toro calls out, "Leo, I want you to declare magic as your major." Before the end of this semester, he finished the sentence, waiting for a response. The main character gave a slight nod. To go upstairs, he stepped into an elevator. However, after pressing the button, for some reason, the elevator wouldn't budge. "Why isn't it working?" Leo asked curiously, pressing the button repeatedly. To enlighten him, a voice responded, "You need to channel mana into it. That's how you activate it." "Nice to meet you, Leo. So, you're the famous freshman representative?" The owner of the voice was the burly Lee, a fifth-year student from the night department. Leo replied, recognizing him as a senior. Teja bows respectfully. Meanwhile, senior Lee Dimu, Aidomu, is curious about Teju's presence there. So he asks, "What brings you to the Hero Tower, freshman?" Our protagonist frankly replies, "Well, I need to talk to the Student Council President." Teju's casual attitude makes the senior chuckle. Stroking his chin, he remarks, a freshman who isn't intimidated by me at all. Quite bold to barge straight into the Student Council President's office. I wouldn't call it barging in. Leo spoke up, offering a reminder. But it seemed the burly guy didn't hear him. So, he suggested to Leo, "You should seriously consider joining the night department. What do you say to that offer?" Leo could only offer a forced smile. One after another, people kept coming up to him, inviting him to join their departments. "I'm exhausted before the main event even starts," Leo groaned internally. Cut to the Student Council President's office. Arriving there, Leo stopped, raised his hand to knock, and said, "President G.I. It's Leo, Bob. May I come in?" In response to this question, the handsome young man's warm voice rang out. And upon seeing that he was granted permission, Leo quickly opened the door and stepped inside. And the moment he saw him, the handsome young man asked directly, "What's the matter, Leo?" Leo replied. Leo looked a bit pensive. After a few seconds, he stated his purpose. "I want to enter the Forbidden Library." His request immediately caused the Student Council President's expression to change. Then, he spoke to Leo with a serious look. "Leo, I know you're not one for jokes, but there are only two ways for an ordinary student to enter the Forbidden Library. The first is to conquer the Hero's Tomb. Traditionally, the Dungeon Conqueror will personally return the acquired pages to the Heroic Chronicles. As for the second method, I'll let you know once you join the Student Council," Rai said with a smile. It seems everyone in the Student Council is trying to recruit Leo to their side. Time quickly passed. The scene changed to the familiar training grounds. Today was the practical exam for the night department. And even though it wasn't his department, but today, many people from other departments came to observe. And of course, There was the guy who loves to gossip about everything CA. Finally, the day has come. It's the night department's first practical exam day. A huge crowd has gathered to watch. You can't watch a match like this without some popcorn. He enthusiastically hawks his wares to the students in the stands. It makes Chelsea, the mage, sigh. Witnessing this scene, it seems Kay is truly passionate about business. Ella responds with a burst of laughter. She laughs heartily. Haha, that's so Kay. He'd make a fortune, even if he wasn't at Lumen. Elsewhere, Leo scans the crowd and notices that Chloe, the mage, doesn't seem to be here. And then, without keeping everyone waiting any longer, Professor Ayan stepped forward and announced the first sparring match. Halloween Snap from Class 1 versus Leo Blog from Class 5. Hearing their names called, both students simultaneously stepped forward. Meanwhile, the entrepreneurial Sang-in spotted a potential customer, a prime target. He rushed over with his sales pitch. Professor Shin, sir, care for some popcorn and a refreshing drink today? He asked cheerfully, offering the snacks. However, the professor responded to his offer with a condescending smirk. You think I'd buy that? Undeterred, Sang-in persisted. Instead, he turned and looked at his friend, Seola. Celia nodded in agreement beside him. It was like they had rehearsed this many times before. Just then, Celia put on an adorable, kitten-like face and turned to look at their teacher with expectant eyes. Professor, could you buy us some popcorn? She asked. It's really delicious in there. She wasn't the only one. Kai started chanting section, leading the other students to cheer and join in. Since the students were so insistent to save face, whether he wanted to or not, section had to agree. Give everyone one, he said calmly. Meanwhile, our merchant friend was overjoyed because he had just made another huge sale. Back to the arena, looking at his opponent, Leo smiled brightly and wished him good luck. The person standing on the other side, responding to Leo's friendly expression, had a cunning look on his face. This guy was Harry, from the night department. He was also a descendant of a heroic lineage. Seems like you're not taking me seriously, he sneered. You'll regret that, Harry said, licking his lips. Additional information. Basic Lumen information from the night department's midterm practical exam. Passed the exam by winning 5 times in sparring matches. Up in the stands, many students started watching Leo and curious about his true abilities. I wonder, what kind of skills does this 5th-year freshman have? A girl asked. The boy sitting next to her, as if he'd heard something from somewhere, replied, since Leo specializes in 3 subjects, there's bound to be a gap compared to those who focus on just one. Don't forget Yahello is 3rd in Class 1, right after Syria and Dion. As for Yahello, he didn't like the main character very much. He thought Leo was arrogant and always hanging around Julia, unaware of the 2 students' thoughts. Professor Ayan began to announce the rules. The one who incapacitates their opponent will win this. Think of this as a real duel. The moment he finished speaking, Leo's expression suddenly changed. He began to sense a malevolent energy emanating from a nearby building not far from where they stood. The scene shifts to the sorceress, Chloe, to find a way to defeat Leo. She's currently buried in her studies, but the more she researches, the more despair she feels. Frustrated, she rips up the paper in her hands and grits her teeth. No way. How could I possibly replicate this unique magic with my abilities alone? Lost in thought, she becomes enraged and sweeps all the books and papers off the table. Louise told herself, I absolutely cannot lose to Leo in this practical exam. Then, as if she had come to a decision, Louise turned her gaze towards a book. Dark Magic. It was the subject that Leo had always been wary of and muttered about before. With this, I can win. This time, I will definitely win. With that said, her expression seemed to change slightly, becoming different than usual. Back at the training grounds, Leo was still frozen in place. Sensing that dark energy, he was staring towards the building. Seeing Leo standing there dumbfounded, even after the start signal had sounded, how could Harlow miss this golden opportunity? Immediately, he gripped his spear tightly and lunged forward with lightning speed. Too careless. Gotcha, Harlow shouted as he thrust his spear directly towards Leo's handsome face. However, with his combat experience, Leo tilted his head to the side to dodge. But Harlow's attack wasn't over yet. Immediately after, He used a skill called Serpent Spear. The tip of his spear began to transform, morphing into a sinuous shape, like the head of a snake. It darted towards our hero's throat, with lightning speed. But this still wasn't enough to trouble Leo. With a simple flick of his wrist, he effortlessly caught the spear's tip. Again, he stopped it dead in its tracks, not even a millimeter move. The sheer strength in Leo's arm left Harry in disbelief. He questioned his entire existence, wondering where Leo possessed such immense power. Next, Leo yanked the spear back with a powerful tug, sending Harry flying along with it. Before Harry could react, Leo channeled his power into his fist and unleashed a thunderous punch. It landed squarely on Harry's face, sending him flying backward with a mouthful of blood. Like a cannonball, Leo shook his hand casually and mocked. "Who called me careless?" On the other side, that punch came from Leo. Although it caused Yahello excruciating pain, he still had enough strength to stand up, to fight again. "Don't get cocky. The battle has just begun," Yahello said, as his entire body began emitting a blue energy. Strange. Too bad for Leo. This aura only made him feel a sense of disdain. A guy who can't even use outer power properly might have great strength, but that doesn't mean his fundamental weaknesses have been overcome. That's a unique poisonous aura, Leo muttered, watching the blue aura surge towards him. Next on his side, he also enveloped his body with a vibrant red aura to protect himself. On the opposite side, the foolish student Harry still hadn't realized the immense difference in strength between himself and Leo, just how vast the gap was. So, he was still brimming with confidence. "Unless it's something on the level of Syria's fire aura, it's pretty hard to push me back," Harry declared arrogantly. Those were his words. However, just a second later, Leo, with his blazing red aura, broke through the smoke and arrived right in front of him. "You're the one who's always reckless," the protagonist said coldly, a sharp gaze, as if trying to crush the last shred of confidence left in his opponent. Up above, the other students are enjoying themselves, munching on popcorn and watching the fight, like a real-life action movie. In a corner, Duran, who once lost to Leo, slightly furrows his brows at Leo's performance. Meanwhile, Schnauzer herself is filled with questions about Leo. He's strengthened his fire aura. To this extent, since when? She wonders, her eyes filled with surprise and curiosity. Back to Hal's perspective. No matter how foolish he may seem right now, ultimately, he realized Leo's power was extraordinary. Looking at the red aura enveloping Leo, he couldn't help but think, what the? Is that fire on Syria's level? A madman who wants to surpass all systems. Is he really that strong? Worry over Leo's power made a bead of sweat trickle down his face. Harry realized that, without using his trump card, he couldn't beat Leo. Left with no choice, he had to unleash his full power. "I was saving this for Syria, but I guess I have to use it on you," Harry said, and then he focuses his energy into his palm and unleashes a special technique called prison release. Suddenly, from his palm, a vibrant green serpent shoots out. It flies forward with lightning speed, and as it reaches Leo, it coils tightly around him. The serpent opens its mouth and lets out a menacing roar. Even Leo's fiery aura can't push the serpent back. Leo can't help but be impressed. He lets out a small exclamation of praise, thinking, not bad at all. Back to Harry's perspective, we see that he successfully used his skill to restrain Leo. He immediately turns to look at Syria in the stands with a look of excitement in his eyes, just like a young teenager, secretly admiring his crush and trying to show off. "What do you think, Syria? This technique, I prepared it to control your flames." On the other side, Syria seems, noticing Harry's gaze, she sighed and pointed forward, signaling to him. This made him curious. Turning around to look, he discovered that the energy serpent he'd created was slowly evaporating. It was disappearing at a visible rate as the flames on Leo grew more and more intense. Finally, in less than 3 seconds, it vanished completely. It was as if it had never existed. The sight of his ultimate technique, the one he'd trained so hard for, being completely ineffective, made Harry's eyes widen in shock. Left with no other choice, Harry had to resort to close-quarters combat. Harry let out a cold snort and gritted his teeth. He clenched his two spears and charged, launching a fierce attack. Meanwhile, on the other side, Leo swiftly drew his sword. He parried the incoming attack. The force of his counterattack was so powerful that it knocked the spear right out of Harry's hand. In just one clash, the overly confident young man landed on the ground with a thud. Leo then pointed his sword at him and offered him some advice. Never let your guard down until the fire is completely extinguished. That's what he said. At the same time, Professor Ein saw that the battle was over and announced the result. The winner. Leo was up in the stands, observing. His number one fan, the mage Chelsea, was ecstatic. Amazing. That's Leo for you. Magnificent. I knew I could count on you, Leo. Kay chimed in, turning towards Howland. After 7 losses, he finally accepted it. Even in practice, he's still this skilled. No wonder he's on par with Ciola. Harry thought to himself before being interrupted by Ciola's voice. Impressive. That was amazing, Ciola, she said with a smile. Her words made Harry blush slightly. He scratched his cheek. What? Really? You thought it was cool? Moving on, Teacher Ian called the next 2 contestants into the arena. Next up from Class 5, Ella Layden. Hearing her name called, the red-haired mage excitedly stepped forward. All right, who's my opponent? Hearing this, Professor A turned and continued. Class 10, Chelsea, step forward. You'll be facing Ella. As soon as she heard her opponent's name, Ella's eyes went blank. What? Why? Do I have to fight one of the top 3 strongest in our year? She muttered in disbelief. Unfortunately, no one answered her question. On the opposite side, after the summoner Chelsea stepped forward, she clasped her hands and said to her opponent, Please go easy on me. Ella replied, clasping her hands as well. You too. Professor A.N., seeing both students ready, nodded and declared, Let the match begin. Begin. The words had barely left his mouth when Chelsea began to channel her magic, causing water to swirl and surge around her. Meanwhile, Tate gripped his sword tightly, his body engulfed in flames. Then, she channeled her power into her legs, launching herself forward with incredible speed. She aimed her sword directly at her opponent. Up in the stands, Leo saw this, and a worried expression crossed his face. He thought, this is gonna hurt. And, just as he predicted, just as Ella's sword lunged towards Chelsea, it was blocked by an energy barrier. As a result, she was sent flying by the barrier. Like a rag doll, she crashed outside the ring and was immediately incapacitated. She couldn't even get back on her feet. Seeing that, Chelsea waved to the audience, and Professor A, as usual, announced, The winner is Chelsea. Up ahead, Ella had woken up and could only wave her hand in defeat. I'm still not giving up on Chelsea, she said nonchalantly. While climbing, Leo felt a bit regretful that Ella had lost so quickly. The match had been an uphill battle from the start, but if you had stayed calm, you could have done better, Leo muttered. Next up is the match between Syria from Class 1 and Durand from Class 1. Facing him will be fun, Syria said. Durand, upon hearing that, only pondered, remaining silent and not uttering a word. Up in the stands, Leo grabbed some popcorn from the guy next to him and had to admit, this match looks interesting. The scene shifted to the arena where both Syria and Durand had drawn their weapons and enveloped themselves in a powerful aura that caught everyone's attention. Now let's see, who is the strongest knight in Class 1? Syria said excitedly. Without a word, both of them unleashed a flurry of attacks. Powerful sword strikes, with lightning-fast speed, filled the air with the deafening clang of metal on metal. The sheer force of their movements created gusts of wind that reached the stands. Whoa, are these the skills of top students? A bewildered student muttered. Meanwhile, Kate covered his mouth and asked Leo, who was beside him, Who do you think will win? Leo heard the question, and beside him, casually tossed a handful of popcorn into his mouth. Then, he calmly shared his thoughts. Let's see. Based on the current situation, it looks like Celia is going to lose. His calm words made Kate gasp in surprise. You're so cold. Ignoring the comment, Leo looked into Celia's unwavering, calm eyes. He started to think differently. That look in Celia's eyes, it's like she has a secret weapon, a way to turn the tables. Back to the fight, you're on. Used his aura's advantage to dash forward with lightning speed. He unleashed a swift attack, grazing Celia's face. A streak of blood appeared on her cheek. He followed up with a relentless barrage of fierce attacks, forcing Julia to stumble back a few steps. Then, after being pushed back a certain distance, the swordswoman seized the opportunity to unleash her ultimate technique. At that moment, she raised her sword high above her head, and from within, the sword began to emanate. A blazing inferno. The flames shot straight up into the sky. Feeling the immense power radiating from her, all the students were on the edge of their seats. Whoa, this is no joke, the group gasped, unsure of what ultimate move Julia was about to unleash. Only the protagonist, seeming to realize something, praised her. Julia's using her head really well. The training room in the freshman building is quite small. Syria realized she couldn't keep up with Duran's speed, so she turned the training room into her stage. Now, inside this blazing inferno, Duran's movements would be restricted. The intense heat would also impair his vision. She was already amazing, but now she's become even more formidable. Syria silently praised Leo, and just as Leo predicted, inside Syria's fiery domain, Duran's vision was obstructed. It made him hesitate to charge in. Recklessly, turning to the swordswoman, Julia, she seized the opportunity. With Duran unable to pinpoint her location and unsure how to react to the blazing field, her figure swiftly moved behind him and launched a surprise attack. It's a shame, though, because Duran's instincts warned him. He sensed the danger and ducked just in time, narrowly avoiding the blow. Then, gritting his teeth, he charged his sword with lightning and thrust it upwards. But Syria's next move completely caught him off guard. She reached out and grabbed the blade, stopping it dead in its tracks. Seeing this, a triumphant smile spread across Syria's face. "Gotcha," she exclaimed. With those words, she launched a headbutt, smashing her forehead into Duran's. The unexpected attack left him with his eyes rolled back, white as a ghost. He was dazed, sprawled out on the ground. As for Professor Ayan, after confirming that Duran was no longer able to fight, he declared the winner to be Sylvia Schrödinger. His announcement was met with cheers from the surrounding students, congratulating her victory. Back to Sylvia, seeing Duran regaining consciousness beside her, she offered him a piece of advice. "Why don't you try working on your stamina a bit?" With that, she extended her hand to help the blonde-haired boy up. Duran didn't hesitate and took her small hand in his and gets back on her feet. Look at that amazing sportsmanship. Some students can't even hold back their tears. That move was truly incredible. "I have to capture this," a male student says while frantically snapping pictures. Meanwhile, Leo, witnessing his friend's victory, is overjoyed for her. "Your training paid off, Celia. You were amazing," Kay shouts. Then suddenly, Professor Schutzen reaches out and grabs a handful of Kay's popcorn, calmly saying, "Celia did indeed win. Thanks for the explanation, Professor." And just like that, the night department's practical exam concludes with Celia Stevinger having 4 wins and 1 loss. Duran has 4 wins and 1 loss. Chelsea has 4 wins and 1 loss. And our main character, Lang, is the only one with a perfect record of 5 wins. He hasn't lost a single match. 1 week quickly passes. The linguistics theory exam has just ended. Looking at the stack of exams in his hands, and after counting them, Professor Harris neatly arranges them and nods at the students before him. "You all did well. Don't fail and get expelled. Study hard." He slams the door shut, making a loud bang. As soon as the professor leaves, Ella starts to lose it from frustration. "Ugh, it's always expulsion this and expulsion that," she complains. It seems like her test didn't go very well. Meanwhile, in another corner of the classroom, 2 boys approach the class genius, Chelsea. They ask her, "Let me see your answers." "Who should I show them to first?" she says arrogantly, making the 2 brown nosers wide-eyed. "Come on, let me see. Please," they plead. The scene changes to another corner of the classroom. Our main character, Leo, is sprawled out on his desk like a lazy cat. Suddenly, Nana, the girl with pink hair, turns around and asks, "How was the test?" Hearing his name, the class president, Leo, lifts his head and scratches it as he replies, "I don't think it's too bad." Your words made Nana burst out laughing. Class president, you always look like you have everything under control, but you can also make a face like this." Leo's face turned blank in response, as if he was still half asleep. Did I really do that? Looking at your face, Nana found it even funnier. She even gave Leo a free healing session. If you feel pain anywhere, just tell me. I'll heal you with my magic. At the same time, out of nowhere, the merchant Caden crawled out from some corner and started complaining. Oh, my shoulders and back are so stiff. Help me out here. As soon as he finished speaking, before anyone could even respond, Chelsea, the mage girl, started rapidly punching his back. Like a machine, the orange-haired guy was in so much pain that he spat out all the water he was drinking. Doesn't feel so bad now, does it? Chelsea asked with a bright smile before turning to Leo. Leo, how's your summoning practice going? They say you almost never show up in the summoning practice room. In response to this question, Leo said that he practices diligently in places where no one can see him. To this claim, Chelsea believed him 100%, without a single doubt. That sounds just like you, Leo. So, what rank are you aiming for in the summoning test? First place, of course. Leo confidently shares his goal. And so, time passes once again. Once more, the scene shifts to the summoning department's training grounds. Today is the day of the practical exam for the summoning course. Although it's a summoning department exam, however, many students from other departments have come to observe. As everyone awaits the start of the test, the announcer's voice echoes throughout the arena. Greetings! It's that time of year again, the biggest event of the first semester for freshmen. Welcome to the summoning race. I'm Ran, a third-year student from the Department of Summoning. Over there in the stands, we have Syria and Guy here to observe the test. While waiting for the test to begin, Syria turns to her brother and asks, "So, this is really a test?" She asks curiously, and Guy explains the summoning race is a tradition in the Department of Summoning that everyone loves. It's also a highlight of the interdepartmental exchange program. So, everyone's excited. And speaking of excitement, let's talk about that merchant K. As always, whenever there's an event and students gather, he's there selling popcorn and Coke to make a little extra cash. Meanwhile, down at the training grounds, the students of the summoning department had gathered. Just then, the summoner, Elisa, turned and stared intently at the main character, speaking up. I heard you performed exceptionally well in the Knights Department's practical exam. Are you well prepared for the summoning department's practical exam? In response, Leo said, of course, I'm prepared. Elisa seemed to find Leo's words unconvincing. A hint of suspicion crept into her voice. Yet you haven't shown up to a single practice session. Do you look down on the summoning department? Her words. He started to agitate the other students, making them increasingly angry with Leo. Yeah, if you're going to be lazy, just quit. We've never even seen you make a contract or summon a spirit. Frustrated murmurs filled the air. Finally, their friend, Tai, stepped in to calm everyone down. Everyone, please calm down. However, it seemed Tai's words didn't carry much weight. The student's frustration showed no signs of abating. A blonde student stepped forward to confront Tai. Don't defend him, just because you're in the same class. He has no respect for our subject. Hearing this, Chelsea frowned and spoke up. This atmosphere is unsettling. If this is happening before the test, before she could finish her sentence, a black-haired student with a center-parted hairstyle interrupted sarcastically. Chelsea, you have excellent knight skills, so you shouldn't need to worry much about summoning, right? Isn't that right? His name is Cian Ryu. He's also from the Eastern Continent, like Chelsea. And before he spoke, Chelsea's voice faltered. He didn't let her finish. The burly Warrendon stepped in to complain. It's too loud. If you're going to argue and form cliques just because of slightly better stats, then please don't do it in front of me. Go somewhere else. In response to this, Cian Ryu, I don't know what got into him, but he started bristling like a rabid dog, fuming with rage. What did you just say? Warrendon replied, as Warrenden's face contorted with disdain. I said it's pathetic. How people act like riding a summoned beast is some grand accomplishment. The perspective shifted to Cian Ryu. Suddenly he remembered something and pointed at Warrenden. Huh, feeling guilty now, are we? You barely ever show up for summoning practice. Taming practice. That's because I don't see the point. I'm not an idiot like you. Who can't even tame a griffin? The large boy smirked, and at this moment, the foolish Cian Ryu couldn't contain his anger any longer. He clenched his fist and threw a punch straight at Warrenden. He forgot that Warrenden was the top student of the southern region. Also, Seol Ryu only came up to Warrenden's chest. Luckily for him, before his fist could connect with the big, white-haired guy, Leo grabbed his arm and reminded him, if you fight before the exam, it won't just be a warning. You'll lose your right to take it. Leo's reminder was like a bucket of cold water thrown in Seol Ryu's face. However, he wasn't grateful to Leo for stopping him. Instead, he just scoffed in annoyance. At the same time, Tae walked over to the main character and softly reminded him, currently, the atmosphere in our summoning class this year isn't very good. Hearing that, Leo's eyes widened in surprise as he asked, why is that? In response, Tae's eyes looked a bit somber as he explained, summoning is a field where the skill gap between specialized and non-specialized students is huge. But because you and Tae, who aren't summoning majors, are at the top of the class, the second-year summoning students, it's really frustrating for us. Plus, you rarely come to practice. Hearing this, Leo understood everything. He finally understood why the other students in the class were so hostile towards him, and he wasn't surprised. Of course, to others, it might look like I'm slacking off, but I don't intend to change a thing, Leo thought to himself. At the same time, in a different corner of the stands, a mysterious figure, cloaked in black, was intently watching Seon Ryu below, whispering, it's starting. The figure created a spatial portal beside them and vanished within. Meanwhile, Seon Ryu, for some reason, a burning rage was building inside him. It raged like a wildfire, but he had no outlet for it. You arrogant bastard, I will crush you, he muttered to himself, eyes blazing with fury, looking quite unhinged. Time flew by. As the test time approached, the voice of the flamboyant announcer, Runba, boomed once again. Before we begin, I'll explain the rules of the freshman summoning exam. Only summoning magic is permitted during the test. Even dual major students are forbidden from using aura or other magic. When the event begins, tame the Graffin in front of you and cross Summoning Island. Then return by circling around the Silent Lake. Who will be the star of the summoning midterm practical exam? The summoning departments will find out soon enough. As his voice boomed, all the summoning freshmen stood at the starting line, faces filled with anxiety, staring straight ahead. And to ease their tension, Professor Yura raised her voice. Freshmen, don't be nervous. Just perform as you've practiced. Anyone who can't handle the pressure can stay after class. Hearing her words, the students only felt even more stressed. They reminded themselves, don't be nervous, but their bodies trembled uncontrollably. Ignoring their anxiety, Yura announced the start of the competition. Some students in the class, seemingly having planned beforehand, exchanged glances and nodded in agreement, while a few other students rushed towards the griffins. The lackeys on Cell's side began casting spells, aiming directly at Leo and Warrenden. Leo and Warrenden. This surprised even the commentator, who exclaimed, whoa, what's going on? It's like they planned this in advance. They're all targeting class president, Leo Board, and the southern top student, Warrenden. Meanwhile, Tai, riding on the back of a griffin, sees Leo being targeted. Worried, he wants to rush over and help, but Leo immediately stops him. Don't worry about me. Just keep going. This is a competition. Hearing those words, Tai Atolit, and quickly urges the griffin onward. Up in the stands, the spectators see Salu's hounds resorting to dirty tactics. They erupt in a chorus of boos and jeers. If they had rotten eggs, they'd be throwing them down right now. So dirty, those summoners should just give up. Compete fairly. Meanwhile, back with Leo. This unfair treatment leaves him feeling a bit frustrated. I knew they hated me, but I didn't expect them to gang up on me like this. Meanwhile, that commentator guy, whatever his name is, he's a summoning department student after all, so he had to speak up, defend his underclassmen a little. Haha, even though the jeers from Class 5 were loud, it was all part of their strategy. Just as I was saying that, Verenden instantly dispelled the attack spell. I turned towards Verenden. He'd stabilized the griffin beneath him, and turned to ask Leo, are you alright? Do you need help? Leo waved him off. No, I can handle it. Seeing that, Verenden didn't waste any time, and immediately takes control of the griffin beneath him, soaring upwards, not like an arrow, but with incredible speed. Meanwhile, Leo is still trapped within the swirling mass of magic, leaving Chelsea in the stands, filled with worry.